righty, folks. Welcome on into the Central Committee stream with your host, Mike from PA. We are live once again. Oh, welcome in. It is Monday, September 8th, 2025. Good morning, everybody. Welcome into the Central Committee stream with your host, Mike from PA, the place you go for politics. Without a doubt, the best place for morning politics streams. It's right here. It's your Mike from PA stream. How about them Steelers, Mike? Most expensive defense, my ass. Oh, did the exact opposite of what I said was going to happen happen? Yes. Does that mean my analysis was wrong? No. Okay. No, it does not. All right. What it means is you guys didn't see the big picture, which is it was a revenge game. There was a lot of emotion. It's the first game of the year. Don't worry. Aaron Rodgers is going to collapse like an elderly cretin before the end of the year. Don't worry. Did the defense totally choke and Aaron Rodgers bail out the Steelers and proving everything I had said about him prior opening to the season incorrect? No. What actually happened is Chris Boswell hit a 60-yard field goal. Chris Boswell hit a 60-fucking-yard field goal. Okay? You win a game off a 60-yard field goal. That's the kicker's win. I don't give a shit about everything else that happened. Sports. Mike, at least you're not stuck being a Miami fan because of your dad. I'm a Browns fan and I hate Rodgers, but the Steelers will still find a way to make the playoffs. Yes, I know. It's because they are, you know, the best franchise in football. Let's be honest. If you were a Steeler fan, have they made the playoffs the most of any team? It has to be the Steelers, right? The Steelers are consistently good more than any other team. I would say that in my life, Tom Brady and the Patriots are the most successful team pretty clearly. But if you look at, well, no, that's not true because when I was a young kid, Patriots sucked ass and the Steelers were going to Super Bowls. So it doesn't even matter. You know, it's pretty clear that they're the most, like, pretty much generally successful team. In related news, my wife saw my mother, went into the swamp of UF, and came out with a W as one of the best football games I've ever witnessed. I'm telling everybody. Oh, nice. Looks like you were completely right about David Packman. Here's the thing, chat. I want you to understand something. Is that I could have sold out many, many times in my life. In fact, if you were an objective biographer of me, excuse me, if you were an objective biographer of me, the thing that you would say about Mike is, Mike, why didn't you sell out a little bit? Your life would have been so much better. That's legitimately true. But you know what? Now that I look back on it, where I am now, the life I have now, I was rewarded for not being a piece of shit. Not only do I have a completely clear conscience, I also have an amazing life. I have an amazing community. I have an amazing family. I'm winning on every measurable way of winning. And had I been willing to sell out, who knows where I would be, both as a person and in life. Like, one of the reasons why one of the few people to promote me are, like, for example, Hassan, is because I refuse to do shit like this. And I stand up to people based on policies, you know? And you're going to be seeing some of this more this week. Like, I'm going to be, when I talk about people in our space, it's because I consider them to be damaging and toxic, and they have been given so many chances to apologize, to go a different direction, to, you know, they've been shown the evidence and they've decided to be little sneaky rats instead. They've decided to lie about people. They've decided to dissemble. They've decided to take money from billionaires. They've decided to do apologia for genocide. They've decided to attack Hassan because he said cracker. Like, do you know there are people in our space that attacked Hassan for saying cracker? That's crazy. Like, who said that you shouldn't say ACAB? I mean, like, this is kind of crazy stuff. They prefer the absence of tension over the presence of progress and justice. No, some people are just social climbers. They're just social climbers. They don't believe in anything, and they're chameleons. They'll pretend to believe all sorts of shit as long as it advances their career. There's a lot of those people in our space. You know, there's a lot of people in the greater Hassan orbit who don't believe a word they're saying. that are actual grifters. And for a long time, I have kind of approached it from the, well, you know, live and let live. Who am I to investigate everybody like an inquisitor? You know, and then that was a bad decision. That was a bad decision. So I think the new decision going forward will not be that. When I find out someone is a Destiny Orbiter, I'm going to let you know. You know, like, we're not going to be confused anymore. We're not going to be nice to Loner Box. We're not going to be nice to Keffels. You know, if somebody was a Destiny Orbiter, we're going to call that shit out. That's right. Careerist is too good a word. Social climber is what they are. Basically, what makes someone I think social climbing is one of the funniest things in the world because it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And yet people love it. It's like the most over-tried strategy, but it doesn't work. And I'll explain to you why. Because people who are successful, we don't want social climbers in our life. And what I mean by that is people that will throw their friends in the trash to advance their career. Because you could always get better, right? So if you social climb your friends, eventually you're going to, if you're successful, social climb me. So why the fuck should I invest in you? You're not going to bring me up when you go up. You didn't bring your friends when you came up. Like, duh. And so social climbers tend to hit walls. And the worst part about it is when a social climber crashes and burns, they don't tend to be like regretful for what they did. They tend to like try to destroy everybody who had ever trusted them. So it's like you invest in them for no return, and then when they crash and burn, they try to damage you on the way down. That's why I'm going to do a better job of policing that shit. Social climbing is a fascist activity. Unironically, it is. A new Banksy just popped out outside the Royal Courts of Justice in London, and it's glorious. I mean, it's true. I wish he put something on the poster board, but I guess that's based. Pentagon plan prioritizes homeland over China threat. Okay, so this is a lie. What they mean is invade Latin America. What they mean is invade Mexico, invade Bolivia, invade Venezuela, invade Brazil. That's what they mean. They mean attack Latin America, steal their resources. Pentagon plan prioritizes homeland over China threat. This marks a major departure for the first Trump administration with emphasized deterring Beijing. Pentagon officials are proposing the department prioritize protecting the homeland and Western Hemisphere, a striking reversal from the military's years-long mandate to focus on the threat from China. A draft of the newest national defense strategy, which landed on Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's death this week, places domestic and regional missions. See? Also, this means fascism at home and invading Latin America. Regional missions above countering adversaries such as Beijing and Moscow, according to 3 people briefed on early versions of the report. So we are literally going into 1984 world. We're going to 1984 world. Isn't this amazing? Isn't this great? Them saying this and using women military unit as the image is an intentional pure racism and misogyny. This is going to be a major shift for the U.S. and its allies on multiple continents. The old trusted U.S. promises are being questioned. A U.S. military strike this week that allegedly kills 11 suspected members. I mean, this is propaganda. There is no reason to believe that the people killed were in a gang. There's no evidence. This is just the U.S. government said it, and that's all. The Pentagon also established a militarized zone across the southern border with Mexico that allows troops to detain civilians, a job normally reserved for law enforcement. So in other words, a constitution-free zone. It's increasingly clear that China and Russia want to shape a world consistent with their authoritarian model projection. The shift doesn't seem aligned with President Trump's hawkish views on China at all. The president has continued to express tough rhetoric toward China, including imposing staggering tariffs on Beijing and accusing Chinese President Xi Jinping of conspiring against the U.S. after he met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin at a military parade in the country's capital. You know, China is not aggressive because why don't they have 1 million bases in North Korea? I mean, if China is such a fucking imperialist like America, why don't they have a bunch of bases in North Korea? It would give them closer access to Japan. It would help them intimidate South Korea better, right? If they had the same logic as the US, why aren't they pouring weapons and arms into North Korea? Why aren't they positioning Chinese forces in North Korea? I mean, they fought in the Korean War too. Why don't they have bases in Venezuela? Why don't they have bases in Cuba? Why don't they have bases in Nicaragua? Why don't they have more bases throughout Africa? I mean, the only place that China has foreign military bases is Djibouti, which is a small African country near the Horn of Africa on the Red Sea. Because it's just point blank not true. A Pentagon official and European diplomat confirmed a Financial Times report that the Pentagon's Basic Security Initiative, which grants hundreds of millions of dollars a year to Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, will lose funding this year. Oh no! Anyway, so I want to show you Anne Applebaum. So Anne Applebaum, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the people who kind of normalized fascism in America. Normalized neoconservatism, normalized, the imperial presidency, and is a warmonger who wants the U.S. to fight a war with China. These are the people that are the alternative to Trump. This is why we're losing. This is why fascism is growing in America. Period. Motherfucking period.
I just gave you my take on this week's events in China. I wanted to bring in Anne Applebaum to hear hers. She's a Pulitzer Prize-winning historian, a staff writer for The Atlantic, and she has been warning for years about this very alliance of autocracies and their growing diplomatic and financial ties. Her most recent book, Autocracy, Inc., has just been released in paperback. Anne, welcome. So, as I say,
Vladimir Putin was our guy. I need to underline this like so many more times. Vladimir Putin was America's guy because they wanted to stop socialism and the communist parties from winning elections. And so they went all in funding Yeltsin and Putin. He's our motherfucking guy. He's blowback.
Been talking about this alliance.
That's the thing that's hilarious about Putin. Putin is our guy.
When you watched those pictures of Kim, of Xi, and of Putin, what strikes you as what keeps them together? Because there is fundamentally the shared opposition to a Western-led world and American power, right? Is there more to it?
No, I think that's exactly the point. These are powers that have very different ideologies. Nationalist, communist, theocratic in the case of Iran, which is sometimes part of this group. What unites them is their dislike of us. And by us, I mean,
this is Bush-era stupidity. This is Bush-era stupidity. In what way have the Chinese been aggressive toward the United States? Since the end of the Korean War, in what way have the Chinese been aggressive toward the United States? And by the way, the Korean War, they were on the right side. Okay, they were on the correct side. So what is the Chinese animus for us? They've been trading with us, our top trading partner, for decades. They haven't attacked us. So what are you talking about? What the fuck are you talking about? If I go to China tomorrow, I'll be treated with respect. I will be given hospitality. There will be a gentle, friendly curiosity, but there will not be hostility. I won't be in danger. What the fuck are you talking about?
The democratic world, the language of rule of law.
What rule of law? We're doing a genocide right? Yeah, the language of rule of law, not the practice of it. We're doing a genocide now. We're dismantling the United Nations. We're tearing up international humanitarian law. We're starving 2 million people. You fraud. You fucking fraud. What are you talking about?
The language of transparency, the language of accountability, because of course that's the language of their own internal oppositions. And China and Russia in particular, but the rest as well, have been working for many years to delegitimize that language, to get the idea of human rights, for example, out of international documents, international institutions, and instead promote an idea that using the word sovereignty, which by the way is a word that the Trump administration also uses, by which they mean no one can criticize us, and we get to decide what happens inside our own countries, and also if we feel like invading other countries, nobody can object.
And again, to me, the surprise was to see the Indias, the Egypts, the Turkeys, Indonesia send very high-level representatives.
Why wouldn't they? Why the fuck wouldn't they? What has China done to Turkey? I mean, of all these countries, India has an actual dispute with China over a land border. In the United Nations, there was a General Assembly provision to guarantee food as a human right. Every country in the world voted to make food a human right, except two. I want you to take a wild fucking guess what the two countries were. What are the two countries that don't think food is a right for every human being? The United States and Israel. And the thing about this is, it happened. But are there stories about it? There's only one news source that wrote a story on it, which was a Turkish news source. Gaza aid blockade foretold. Only the U.S. and Israel voted against UN move to make food a human right. The UN resolution was adopted despite opposition from Washington and Tel Aviv, reaffirming that starvation of civilians as a method of combat is prohibited under international humanitarian law.
It does feel like all of these countries are in some way or the other, dismayed by America and what they had thought of was a reliable America has gone.
So America was a predictable power. It stood for long-term investment. It stood for a set of rules and institutions, which if you liked them or didn't like them, at least they were.
Okay. When you watch kind of an American foreign policy blobber, you have to understand that they only speak in bullshit. They only speak in bullshit, right? Like they don't actually mean anything concrete. It's all bullshit. And every single thing they say is laughably stupid on its face. It's an insult to your intelligence. And so they'll say something like this, which is completely dog water. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. Barack Hussein Obama signed a treaty with Iran, the Iran nuclear deal, which involved every major country in the world signed on for a nuclear enrichment program to keep the Iranians from developing nuclear weapons by highly enriching uranium, by allowing them to develop a domestic nuclear energy program that involved monitoring and sanctions that were bought into by everybody, the Europeans, the Russians, the Chinese, the United States, the Middle East. The entire world was in, and Latin America, Africa, everybody was all in on this treaty. If Iran follows the regulations, if Iran allows in the inspectors, if Iran does not pursue nuclear proliferation, the United States of America will give it incentives and it'll be enforced by objective third-party inspectors in control of the international community where the U.S. has sway. All right? Massive, massive agreement. Iran is in total compliance. And what do? Donald Trump comes into office and he rips it up. And when Donald Trump loses office, Joe Biden comes into power onto promises of re-entering the Iran nuclear deal. And you know what he does? He doesn't do it. Instead, he helps Israel do a genocide and assists Israel at doing all sorts of blatant attacks on the international diplomatic order, including assassinations during funerals, assassinations of heads of state, assassination attacks on embassies, targeting government officials in third-party states. What the fuck are you talking about? Predictable. How the fuck are you high? Are you fucking high? And that's just the most notorious example that everybody knows about, but it happens constantly. It happens fucking constantly.
Were predictable. And now the United States is seen as unpredictable. And the president is whimsical. He might change his mind at any minute. It's very dangerous to go and see him in the Oval Office because he might attack you. I know of foreign leaders who've avoided going for that reason. And so the idea that if you want stability and you want security, then it looks to a lot of countries that are not necessarily autocracies themselves. It looks like maybe you need a good relationship with Russia and China. And it's also a form of hedging. If the United States falls through, well, then we're going to need some other friends.
Right. And, you talk about the way I see it is there's this geopolitical balancing against American power. But
what it really is China is saying, we will be the alternative guarantor of world peace. And we say, all right, listen, we know that you've had the United States as the global hegemon. How's that working out for you? If you're in Africa or Latin America, it's working out terrible. If you're European, you've been stagnating for 20 years. If you're in East Asia, you're in pure demographic collapse and your economy's not far behind. Okay. The United States has been global hegemon for 35 years, and it's been a 35 years of stagnation across the world. Except for the hyper rich, last 35 years have been on net bad, except for one place on earth, and that's in China. So since we're the only country in the entire world to not stagnate over the last 35 years, how about we engage in mutually beneficial trade? And then instead of having the United States, which is stomping around the world, committing war crimes and genocide and wars of aggression, how about we develop international institutions that on their foundations rest a respect for the territorial integrity and sovereignty of every nation and state? We live and let live, and we engage in mutually beneficial deals between equals. And we'll have international institutions like the UN that mediate disputes, and no power will bully another. No, there will be no hegemon. There will be no one who goes around making orders. Just a united world of equals. That's what China is proposing. We're not going to go into your country and interfere with your domestic political affairs. We're not going to engineer the elites to our advantage. We're going to make mutually beneficial deals. Because China built itself up not through imperialism, but rather mutually beneficial trade under the supervision of a communist party. That's what built up China. China did not, pound around the world invading countries and installing dictatorships. That's the reality. That's why so many people on the so-called left are dedicated to calling China imperialist, because they don't know what it means and they've never read a book. So they just say, oh my God, I can't believe China traded on the world market for cobalt. That's the same thing as America cooing fucking leaders for 30 years and installing dictatorships that corrupt governments so that the American oil companies could dominate. See, China engaged in a mutually beneficial deal. A Chinese commercial bank gave an infrastructure loan for a country, and then when they fell behind, they modified the payment terms or forgave the loan entirely. That's the same thing as the French controlling 14 West African countries' currency from Paris. I mean, we have a certain type of ideological stupidity where people gesture at books they've never read and make appeals to authority that don't exist. And this is the online space, chock through with Philistinic morons who are infused with American exceptionalism and a desire to flatten differences between power. And it's really, 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 I mean, I don't even know what to say anymore. I'm not conspiratorial. I really am not conspiratorial. I actually resist conspiratorial thinking because I think it's a thought terminating cliche. It's an idea that minds that are not sharp jump to because they can't do the work of figuring shit out. Whenever I find out that someone's really conspiratorial, I kind of take it as an indication that they're not that sharp or they're a little bit lazy. However, if you look at the American left, there is absolutely no doubt that there is an effort to engineer the most worthless, dogshit, idiotic leadership among left-wing movements in the West, especially the United States. The compatible left, CIA left. Oh, absolutely. You know what has made me more reflective like this? You know what has made me more reflect? When I watched the Chinese military parade, when I was watching the Chinese military parade and we were seeing all the weapons, the hypersonic cruise missiles, the drone submarines, the battalions of soldiers marching in perfect lockstep, the new 6th generation fighters and the AWACS aircraft and the new, heavy transport planes and the autonomous drones and the new T-100 tanks, the anti-drone and missile lasers. And we were seeing all this incredible technology that takes an entire country of 1.3 billion people to construct. And we know that the People's Liberation Army would not easily defeat the United States military. But I have people that are in relatively close to my circles who legitimately think a bunch of guys with AR-15s and balaclava masks are going to overthrow this country's State Department and state regime, state security. Like, we can't even put together a pipe bomb on the left, and these people are arguing for revolution right now. If the Weather Underground stepped through a fucking time portal into the United States in 2025, it would be the most effective left-wing, radical left-wing group in the entire country. They can't put together a fucking pipe bomb, and people are talking about revolution. Like, God damn it, dude. And that China's imperialist. Crazy. It's crazy. All the people who make pipe bombs potentially on the other far end, because we have the internet now. We all have spies in our pockets. We all voluntarily, and this includes me, carry fucking bugs in our pocket. You know how easy it is now to catch people? We all voluntarily surveil each other. I probably have 18 apps on here that collect every single thing I do. And the thing about forming some sort of revolutionary organization is it isn't just I have to be perfect. Everybody around me also needs to be perfect. That ain't fucking happening. I'm sure if I said, okay, guys, we're going to have a meetup, no phones allowed, you all would show up with your phones anyway. Did you see on Hassan's stream where he pulled up an American history textbooks? Americans live in a false reality built from childhood. See, the thing is, I'm old for you. I'm old. So I went to a really high quality public school with union teachers, and I took advanced placement history. And then I went to a public university and I studied real books. So I learned about the Munich conference. I learned about the phony war. I learned about the way the Soviet Union actually won World War II, especially in Europe. I learned about the failure of Reconstruction. I learned about antebellum politics, and I read the Cotton is King speech. And I learned about Frederick Douglass, and I learned about Malcolm. I learned about all this shit from a really historically grounded way. I didn't learn the dumb shit you learned. I'm sorry. I got a better education than you did in a public school, a pre-2001 public school education. Like, I don't know what you guys didn't learn. I mean, if I'm being straightforwardly honest, when I look at commentators like Destiny, I knew more about politics in the 6th grade, my social studies class. And in my 6th grade social studies class, when I was 12 and 11, we learned about journalism. We learned about sources. We learned about editorial discretion. We learned about bias. We learned, like, I had a critical thinking class as a 6th grader in middle school that is more educated than half of the creators who have 1 million followers talking about politics on TikTok. It is, I mean, I think, and by the way, I don't think that other people are necessarily like, maybe I'm just weird in that I remember it all. Maybe I'm weird in that it's stuck, but I don't know what you guys don't know. In fact, every single day I'm shocked with the shit people don't know. I'm shocked with the shit people who say they're leftists don't know.
There's also an ideological balancing against democracy, the rule of law, and things like that. Do you think
in what way is China like China has a better business climate than the United States because they have a dedication to what? A educated and healthy and safe and secure workforce. And they push for more competition. If you're going to be a capitalist in China and you suck as a company, the Chinese government is not bailing you out. Look at the way that the Chinese dealt with their property bubble, their Evergrande property bubble, and the way the United States dealt with the property bubble. In China, the companies that led to the property bubble, they were destroyed. They went bankrupt. They were liquidated. Who was bailed out in China? The individual Chinese citizens. The individual Chinese citizens are the ones who were bailed out. The people who bought condos that hadn't been built yet, they were the ones that are getting bailed out. The people are bailed out. The companies, their executives are going to prison. How many American executives went to prison from the Great Recession? There was 0. Evergrande chairman kept in special Shenzhen detention center. Hu Kayan, the chairman of China Evergrande Group, the company at the center of the company's property sector crisis, has been moved to a special detention center in Shenzhen, 2 sources with knowledge of the matter said. After China's securities regulator found Evergrande's flagship unit had inflated earnings and committed securities fraud, Q was fined $6.6 million in March and barred from the security market for life. Evergrande was ordered into liquidation in January. Q, who was once China's richest man, is not known to have been formally charged with any crimes. It's unclear how long he will remain in detention or whether he'll be tried or set free. So in other words, China's Elon Musk did crimes, and what ended up happening? He went to prison! Did I do something different with my lighting? Yes, I did. Is it worse? Is it worse? Is the lighting terrible? Is it worse? Hold on. I may have increased the gain quite a bit. Let me knock it down a bit. There you go. That should be a little bit better. I'm still trying to figure out the lighting in here. Anyway, sorry for going off on a rant. Sorry for going off on an old man rant, but we really do need an old man rant because, like, I feel like the younger generations, you guys don't know what you didn't get. You got fucked. All right, looking at an American history textbook. Let's take a quick look at this. World War II in Europe had its beginnings in the ideas of Adolf Hitler. He believed the Germans belonged to the so-called Aryan race that was superior to all races and nationalities. Consequently, Hitler believed that Germany was capable of building a great civilization. To be a great power, however, Germany needed more land to support a larger population. Already in the 1920s, Hitler had indicated that a Nazi regime would find its land to the east in the Soviet Union. Germany, therefore, must prepare for war with the Soviet Union. Once the Soviet Union had been conquered, according to Hitler, its land would be resettled by German peasants. The Slavic peoples could be used as slave labor to build the Third Reich, an Aryan racial state that Hitler thought would dominate Europe for 1,000 years. I would say basically that this is so simplified as to be wrong. He didn't believe that Germans were Aryans. He believed that there was an Aryan race, an Indo-European race of Aryans, and then there were other competing nationalities, and that Germany had some of the highest Aryan blood, but other states within Europe also had Aryan blood. And basically, how much Aryan blood you had was determined based on how much of an ally you were to Germany. After World War I, the Treaty of Versailles had limited Germany's military power. That's all they say? That's what they say? For the Treaty of Versailles? As Chancellor, Hitler, posing as a man of peace, stressed that Germany wished to revise the unfair provisions of the treaty by peaceful means. Oh, there are unfair provisions? What are they? Germany, he said, only wanted its rightful place among the European states. On March 9, 1935, however, Hitler announced the creation of a new air force. 1 week later, he began a military draft that would expand Germany's army from 100,000 to 550,000 troops. These steps were a direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles. France, Great Britain, and Italy condemned Germany's actions and warned against future aggressive steps. In the midst of the Great Depression, however, these nations were distracted by their own internal problems and did nothing further. Hence, on March 7, 1936, he sent German troops into the Rhineland. Rhineland was part of Germany, but according to the Treaty of Versailles, it was a demilitarized area. That is, Germany was not permitted to have forces or fortifications there. France had the right to use force against any violation of this provision, but would not act without British support. Great Britain did not support the use of force against Germany. However, the British government viewed the occupation of German territory by German troops as a reasonable action by a dissatisfied power. The London Times noted that the Germans were only going into their back garden. Great Britain thus began to practice a policy of appeasement. This policy was based on the belief that if European states satisfied the reasonable demands of dissatisfied powers, the dissatisfied powers would be content and stability and peace would be achieved in Europe. Wait, that's what they say appeasement is? That's what they teach kids appeasement means? Oh my God. That's not what appeasement means. Appeasement means surrendering to aggressive states' expansions in the hopes they will be satisfied, not reasonable demands. That's not appeasement. What the fuck? This is actually teaching kids that diplomacy is bad. Oh my God. Oh my fucking God. What are you talking about? Meanwhile, Hitler gained new allies. Mussolini of Italy had long dreamed of creating a new Roman Empire. In October 1935, Mussolini's forces invaded Ethiopia. Angered by French and British opposition to his invasion, Mussolini welcomed Hitler's support. He began to draw closer to the German dictator. In 1936, both Germany and Italy sent troops to Spain to help General Francisco Franco in the Spanish Civil War. Oh, we mentioned the Spanish Civil War. Are we going to talk about how it was a military coup against a democratically elected government? In October 1936, Mussolini and Hitler made common agreement on recognizing their common political and economic interests. 1 month later, Mussolini spoke of a new alliance between Italy and Germany called the Rome-Berlin Axis. Also in November, Germany and Japan signed the Anti-Comintern Pact, promising a common front against communism. Okay, we did the Anschluss. Hitler's next objective was the destruction of Czechoslovakia. On September 15th, he demanded that Germany be given the Sudetenland, an area in northwestern Czechoslovakia that was inhabited largely by Germans. What? Ethnic Germans. Not Germans. Ethnic Germans. Not Germans. Ethnic Germans. Or German speakers. Not Germans. I would actually say that I consider this to be a Nazi book. He expressed his willingness to risk World War to achieve his objectives. At a hastily arranged conference in Munich, British, French, German, and Italian representatives did not object to Hitler's plans, but instead reached an agreement that met virtually all of Hitler's demands. German troops were allowed to occupy the Sudetenland. The Czechs, abandoned by the Western Allies, stood by helplessly. So they invaded the country. They invaded Czechoslovakia, took their territory, except they didn't stop in the Sudetenland. They went and seized Prague. The Munich Conference was the high point of Western appeasement of Hitler. When Neville Chamberlain, the British Prime Minister, returned to England from Munich, he boasted that the agreement meant peace in our time. Hitler had promised Chamberlain that he would make no other demands. Like many others, Chamberlain believed Hitler's promises. In fact, Hitler was more convinced than ever that the Western democracies would not fight. Increasingly, he was sure that he could not make a mistake, and he had by no means been satisfied at Munich. In March 1939, Hitler invaded and took control of Bohemia and Moravia in western Czechoslovakia. In the eastern part of the country, Slovakia became a puppet state controlled by Nazi Germany. On the evening of March 15, 1939, Hitler triumphantly declared in Prague that he would be known as the greatest German of them all. By the way, Bohemia and Moravia are Czech. That's Czechoslovakia. Why are you using regional words for a country being invaded? What the fuck? This is like saying the U.S. military invaded Ottawa. At last, the Western states reacted to the Nazi threat. Hitler's aggression had made clear that his promises were worthless. When Hitler began to demand the Polish port of Danzig, Great Britain saw the danger and offered to protect Poland in the event of war. At the same time, both France and Britain realized that only the Soviet Union was powerful enough to help contain Nazi aggression. They began political and military negotiations with Joseph Stalin, the Soviet dictator. Okay, this is actually just propaganda. This is actually just ahistorical lies. Oh my, I mean, like the absolute propaganda that is now Google is fucking insane. Oh my God, this is actually so embarrassing. Basically, sorry for getting so quiet there for a second, but the Soviet Union had tried to form an anti-fascist pact for almost 5 years at that point. And then at the very end, the British and the French wanted the Soviets to basically declare an anti-German position while also allying with what amounted to a Polish dictator who was a fascist. The Soviets reached out many times about anti-fascism in Europe for years and years, and they were continually rebuffed by the Western allies. And you know why this is true? Hitler continued to believe that the West would not fight over Poland. And guess what, chat? He was right. What history textbook did you have in school? I don't remember. I wonder if I could find that out. That would be interesting. He now feared, however, that the West and the Soviet Union might make an alliance. Such an alliance would be a two-front war for Germany. To prevent this possibility, Hitler made his own agreement with Stalin. Germany and the Soviet Union signed the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact. In it, the two nations promised not to attack each other. To get the Non-Aggression Pact, Hitler offered Stalin control of Eastern Poland and the Baltic states. Because he expected to fight the Soviet Union anyway, it did not matter to Hitler what he promised. He was accustomed to breaking promises. Hitler invades Poland. Hitler shocked the world when he announced the Non-Aggression Pact. The treaty gave Hitler the freedom to attack Poland. He told his generals, "Now Poland is in the position in which I wanted her. I am only afraid that at the last moment, some swine will submit to me a plan for mediation." Hitler need not have worried. On September 1st, German forces invaded Poland. 2 days later, Germany and France declared war on Germany. For years, Germany and France have been attempting to this is just a lie. This is absolutely just a fucking lie. I know what's going. Oh my God. This is literally an engineered search results. You cannot search for anything. Oh my Lord. Stalin's failed alliance. I had to go to a university press to find books on this. Drawing on extensive archival research, Stalin's failed alliance presents an inside look at Soviet foreign policy making. In the spring of 1936, the Soviet effort to build an anti-Nazi alliance was failing. Stalin continued, nevertheless, to support diplomatic efforts to stop Nazi aggression in Europe. In Stalin's failed alliance, the sequel to Stalin's gamble, Michael Jabara Carly continues his reevaluation of European diplomacy during the critical events between May 1936 and August 1939. Carly's history traces the lead up to the outbreak of the war in Europe on 1 September 1939 and sheds light on the Soviet Union's effort to organize a defensive alliance against Nazi Germany. The author argues the sincerity of Soviet overtures to the Western European powers and that the non-aggression pact was a latchness response to the refusal of other states, especially Britain and France, to conclude an alliance with the USSR against Nazi Germany. Drawing on extensive archival research in Soviet and Western archival papers, Stalin's failed alliance aims to see the European crisis of the 1930s through Soviet eyes. So basically, now this is just archival research based on direct sources. So the idea that the Soviets refused is complete historical revisionism and actually outright lies. It's just bullshit. The Western powers wanted to use Hitler against the Soviet Union because they were more concerned about communism. This is just lying. Okay, then they did the Japanese, but let's keep going. Okay, all right, so they say, oh man, the British and the French really they guaranteed Poland, and that's when the war started, except they didn't fight. When Poland was invaded, the British and the French did not fight. They practiced what was called the phony war. So they basically allowed Germany to defeat Poland, and they stood on their border. They didn't invade the Rhineland. They didn't attack Germany. They stood on the French border waiting for Poland to be destroyed. They formally declared war on Germany, but they took no offensive military action while German forces were concentrated in the east. So not only did they not do anything, they actually fought a phony war. This is... Honestly, I'm surprised they even talk about it. Churchill literally said we could use the fascists in our fight against communism. Like, literally, this is the reality. It sounds like someone knowledgeable wrote a simplified but decent summary of the history that the editor... No, this is actually dog shit. This is actually lies. It's propaganda. It's shocking propaganda. The reality is the Soviets fought fascism ferociously, including sending troops and volunteers to Spain, in which the United States, France, and Britain remained neutral, while Germany and Italy poured troops and equipment and material into Spain to help the military fascist coup against a democratically elected Spanish government. Like, this is just propaganda, man. It just lies. It's outright lies.
You know, are we returning to almost a Cold War-like situation where there are countries now that are increasingly standing in opposition to, you know, liberal democratic values, international rules of law, things like that?
Yes, although it's even more tricky than the Cold War, because the opponents of liberal democracy are also inside liberal democracies. And there's a clear alignment between the German far right, the American far right, the British far right, and sometimes with Russians and with others in the autocratic world. And they are also...
Democratic values are when you support the ethnic cleansing and apartheid and a genocide based on race and religion in your top client state. When you pour hundreds of billions of dollars to kill an indigenous population in their homeland. That's democratic values, folks.
Seeking to undermine liberal democracy. So it's not as straightforward. It's not like there's one block of Democrats versus one block of autocrats. It's actually a more complicated picture.
And the right-wing populists in one country support those in others. So I look at Trump, and, you know, what is his anger with South Africa? It's about the treatment of white farmers. Or you look at what he's doing in Poland.
What treatment of white farmers? What the fuck are you talking about?
Where he's reaching in and celebrating and feting the president of Poland, who is a titular figure, doesn't have that much political power, because he's a right-wing ally, right?
Yeah, but you can see that in other countries as well. I mean, there's favoritism shown to Nigel Farage, favoritism shown to the AFD. That's more
shown to Bolsonaro.
Bolsonaro in Brazil, right?
Well, Bolsonaro in Brazil is actually almost an extreme case, because you have the U.S. actually sanctioning Brazil because...
What is the best approach to winning over the working class to leftist ideology? Far-right propaganda is amazingly effective at exploiting fear, anger, and anxiety. The answer is you have to have an electoral movement. If you want my honest-to-God take, you need to have a strong electoral and trade unionist movement that is making firm promises and has an actual plan and addresses the suspicions and the fears and the anxieties of survival within our society for the working class. You have to actually have a movement that says we see you, we hear you, and we're going to take care of you with big, bold promises of change. Unfortunately, we don't have that. And whether you like it or not, people think that if you are not electorally engaged, you're not a serious movement. You're basically on the same level to them as the Girl Scouts. Like, let's be fucking honest. Who does more mutual aid? Little boys try to get their Eagle Scout badge, or leftist movements in the US doing direct? Like, I mean, let's be fucking honest here. In the scale, we need to have an actual electoral and working class movement that has millions of people in it. And going, hey, are you tired from work? I have a solution. Can you come do 15 hours of voluntary labor for your community? Like, that's not exactly going to get us all marching towards socialism. I'm not saying it's bad. It's good. It's good to do that stuff. Mutual aid is fucking based. And we need to have mutual aid networks as well as other movements. You do all of the above. But I think that one problem we have is there's a lot of people that have bought the CIA talking point, and this is a talking point directly from the CIA, that if you're contending for state power, it takes away from energy that could be focused on education or direct action. That is a CIA talking point. That is a CIA talking point. Literally a CIA talking point to make you stupid. Zohran Mamdani has 90,000 volunteers for his political campaign to be mayor of New York. 90,000 volunteers for November, and we're not even anywhere near, we're not even close to November. It's still early September. Do you think those 90,000 people have been diverted from an ultra leftist reading group, or do you think those people were apolitical and disorganized before the race? Simple, straightforward question. Where did you hear the 90K number? Hold on. Okay, they said they're going to get to 90,000 volunteers. We are going to get to 90,000 volunteers. Zohran said, he said, yes, we're going to get to it. He said during the primary, they already had 52,000. And like, I think for me, one of the things that I like to study the most is the Black Panther Party. Because to me, the Black Panther Party is probably an organization whose politics are the most similar to mine. I really, really do appreciate the Black Panther Party, and I take it very seriously as Fred Hampton was incredibly intelligent. It's a really awesome, party. They did so much direct action, so much mutual aid. And what happened to them? They got absolutely turned into paste by the power of the state. And I think there's a disrespect of history when you think that that's not still happening, where you disdain state power. We disdain electoral campaigns, not of people that are revolutionary socialists necessarily, but are at least sympathetic to our causes. And I'm like tired of having this conversation. I'm tired of having this conversation because it's self-evidently stupid. It's self-evidently on its face incorrect to say that left-wing political candidates in elections is harming the left. It's self-evidently stupid. It's cringeworthy.
Because Brazil has its own political system and its own rule of law, and it's punished its equivalent of January the 6th, an uprising to overthrow the election. The Brazilians have continued to punish the people responsible for it, and the Trump administration is now angry at Brazil for doing that. How
do Poles react to the president, in effect, picking a side in a domestic political debate?
I mean, it would depend which side of the political spectrum you're on. I mean, I think that's true in almost every country. You know, that the effect of a U.S. intervention.
Do you have a positive or negative view of socialism? Positive 39, negative 57. Dem, 66% positive, 30% negative. GOP, 14% positive, 86% negative. Indy, 38% positive, 57% negative. Ages 18 to 34 plus 3, 35 to 54 minus 10, 55 plus negative 37. No college, negative 19. College grad, negative 4. Male, negative 31. Female, negative 5. White, negative 27. Non-white, even. So what does this tell me? This tells me that the Overton window is being stretched by people like Zohran Mamdani. Zohran Mamdani is actually raising the approval ratings of socialism to the highest level it's ever been among Democrats, and nearly the highest it's ever been among independents. This is years before a presidential campaign. If you could literally see it bending the curve. Now, have we won? Have we convinced the majority of people that socialism is good? No, but you could see the movement happening. Capitalism declining to an all-time low of 54% approve, 42% negative, 54% approve, 42% negative, the lowest ever.
In a democratic country is really further polarization, because it makes, it makes
like the main risk we have is gender polarization, because gender polarization will lead the left into oblivion. Gender polarization will lead the left to oblivion. We have to figure out how, and by the way, Zohran Mamdani, hate to be a squeaky wheel, won young men. He won men. So you can see that young men are not completely lost to fascism at this point. As long as we build something that is actually concrete and real and has an enemy, we have a chance of reversing this shit. I'm not saying that we should cater to men. That's what I think a lot of people get confused about. When we say we have to convert men as well as women, a lot of rad libs, that's what they are. A lot of rad libs, and if you're one of those people, I'm talking about you. If I say it's important that we have men in this coalition, a lot of rad libs will go like, Mike is saying that misogyny is not real and that we should cater to the male gaze. And that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if we have a bold universalist message where the details of the program are highly intersectional, but the programs themselves are marketed as universal and solving everyone's problems, not micro-targeted neoliberal marketeering, but rather broad, simple, and understandable and articulable fairness to the working class, we could get these people back, not by pandering to them, but offering them something to believe in, a universe that includes them. And I want to make sure that white men get health care too. We need to focus on collectivism and trying to undo the individualistic mindset that capitalism incentivizes. Exactly what I'm saying.
It just divides people more deeply.
No one is being left out.
That's a very important point, that it's more complicated than the Cold War, because the enemies of liberal democracy are now both outside and within.
Yes, but I should also say that people who admire and want liberal democracy are also on the other side. There is an Iranian opposition. There is a Russian opposition. There's even a Chinese.
The Iranian opposition doesn't want liberal democracy. They want to reinstall the fucking Shah for a fucking monarchy where there will be the elite, just like Saudi Arabia. Fucking liar.
Opposition, and they also have relationships with one another, and they are also interested in changing their own governments or in changing. So it's not as if they're, even Russia is a clear picture either.
That's a nice uplifting note to end on, Anne Applebaum. Thank you so much. The book, Autocracy Inc., is in paperback. As with everything you write, it's fantastic.
Maybe it's not a good place to ask, but I'll try anyway. Where do you see Eastern European leftists? What should they do, considering that they have been exposed to decades of anti-communist propaganda? I hope it's not too much of a loaded question. I mean, what is my feeling about Eastern European leftists? Well, it depends on what state you're in, or which country you're in. That means the same thing. The best way to appeal to young men is to promise them good-paying jobs and home ownership, both things they're absolutely resentful over not having their grandparents in. I mean, literally, that's what you need to be able to live in this country, so... yeah, of course we should promise that. Should social electoral movements start at the provisional state level before federal? The answer to that is you do all of it at once. This isn't an RPG where you have to like grind through the lower levels. I'm a level 1 state rep. I need to hit level 12 state senator before I could run for Congress. Like, that's not how, it's not a video game. Okay? We run for everything at once. Okay? Like, I don't know where this idea came from. I think it's some sort of like all politics is international. All politics is international. We're all saying the same talking points. British liberals are saying the same thing that American liberals are saying. And British leftists are saying the same thing that American leftists. And British right-wingers are saying the same thing as American right-wingers. All politics is international. We're all in these huge international social media networks We're all seeing the same arguments. Local news has been obliterated, except for, local network news screaming about whatever crime they can, stream into boomer brains to scare them as crime declines to the lowest level it's seen in decades. All politics is national and international. So that means you run for everything, local, state, and federal. We're not going to level up. And the reason why I say that is because the Constitution has something known as the Supremacy Clause. In the Supremacy Clause, higher levels of government can impose their will on lower levels of government. So, for example, in the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution, federal law supersedes state law when they clash. At the state level, state law can preempt local ordinances and laws and regulations. So if you're like, I'm not going to run for government, federal government, I'm going to run for mayor. Well, then you get elected to mayor, and then the state government just passes a bunch of laws that prevents you from doing anything. So all you could do is sit there and manage the status quo because they preempted you out of making any laws. For example, in Austin is a perfect example of this. In Austin, they tried to pass a law requiring that construction workers get water breaks during heat waves. So what happened? Texas water break laws eliminated. As Texas swelters, local rules requiring water breaks for construction workers will be nullified. Governor Greg Abbott approved a law this week that would eliminate city and county ordinances like Austin's and Dallas's mandated water breaks. In a week where parts of the state are getting triple-digit temperatures and weather officials urge Texans to stay cool and hydrated, Governor Greg Abbott gave final approval to a law that will eliminate local rules mandating water breaks for construction workers. House Bill 2127 was passed by the Texas legislature during this year's regular legislative session. Chat, this is what's known as a abundance law. This is deregulating the construction industry to try to create abundance. Supporters of the law said it will eliminate a patchwork of local ordinances across the state that bog down businesses. The law's scope is broad, but ordinances that establish minimum breaks in the workplace are one of the explicit targets. The laws nullify ordinances enacted by Austin in 2010 and Dallas in 2015 that established 10-minute breaks every 4 hours so that construction workers can drink water and protect themselves from the sun. It also prevents other cities from passing such rules in the future. San Antonio had been considering a similar ordinance. Texas is the state where the most workers die from high temperatures. Government data shows at least 42 workers died in Texas between 2011 and 2021 from environmental heat exposure. Unions claim this data doesn't fully reflect the magnitude of the problem because heat-related deaths are often recorded under a different primary cause of injury. The problem particularly affects Latinos because they represent 6 out of every 10 construction workers, according to U.S. Census Bureau data. Construction is a deadly industry. Whatever the minimum protection is, it could save a life. We are talking about a human right, said Anna Gonzalez, Deputy Director of Policy and Politics at Texas AFL-CIO. We will see more deaths, especially in Texas's high temperatures. So, if you're like, I'm not going to run for state government, I want to start local right here in Austin. I passed a rule that allows construction workers to get a 10-minute break. I'm saving lives. Oh, well, never mind. It got wiped out. So not only do you look incompetent, you look powerless. Do you think that actually empowers people to get involved in local politics? If you win an election against the machine, you pass an ordinance, and then it immediately gets nullified? If you want to have power, we have to go for everything we can get from top to bottom. I'm not saying don't run local, but if you want to run local and you want to actually do shit, you're going to need people at the state level. You're going to need people at the federal level that are giving you the opportunity to actually affect your local community. You can't just do one. And I know why you're saying, why don't we just run locally? Because you don't want to deal with the frustration and the effort that is involved in running for a big office and possibly failing. Somebody somewhere in your life taught you something that has been a major problem for you. The belief that failure is death. And so you do everything you can to avoid failure out of fear. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the biggest detriment to a person's growth that could possibly exist. You are anything that is good and worth doing, you will fail at first. Guaranteed. You're not going to go into the kitchen and cook a fucking souffle first try off the rip. Okay? It's going to fall. Failure is the default mode. Stop allowing fear of failure to ruin your fucking life from cowardice. Mike, I worked at the Tesla Gigafactory in Austin and saw so many people fall out from the heat. They didn't have appropriate air conditioning indoors. There wasn't enough fans to accommodate each worker. It was pathetic. I hated that job, even though it was the highest paying I've had here. Me and 20,000 others were laid off last year in April. I'm sorry, Jay. I need to keep this in mind when applying to med school. I'm applying right now and have all the fear trying to hold me back. Thank you for reminding us that failure is not death. Death is surrender. Death is giving up. That's what death is. Death is cynicism. Death is surrender. All right, let's move on to the next story I wanted to talk about, which is ICE raids Hyundai plant and arrests hundreds of South Koreans. ICE raids Hyundai plant and arrests hundreds. I got distracted in the middle of typing. This is one of the most insane stories I've ever seen. What's a Dio? A VO.
At a Georgia Hyundai plant describe a chaotic scene after an immigration raid at the facility. Federal authorities say Thursday's raid was the result of a months-long investigation by several agencies. The crackdown, the largest so far on U.S. work sites, led to 475 arrests of mostly Korean nationals. Some of the workers tried to flee as word of the raid spread. CNN's Rafael Roma is covering the story. What more are you learning of what was really a chaotic scene?
It was difficult to find out details about what actually transpired the first couple of days, but now we're hearing from people and officials exactly what happened. And one of the things that we have learned, some of the details that we have learned, Fred, after the massive raid conducted Thursday, include that officers spoke with each worker one by one to determine which were in the U.S. legally and allowing some to leave while taking undocumented immigrants into custody. By the time they were done at 8 p.m. on Thursday, agents had arrested 475 people, most of them Korean nationals, making it the largest sweep yet in the current Trump administration's immigration crackdown at American job sites. CNN obtained a video that shows a Homeland Security Investigations agent telling workers to cease operations immediately. Let's take a look.
We need construction to cease immediately. We need all work to end on the site right now.
And shortly after the agents arrived at the plant and workers realized what was happening after word spread across the property, chaos ensued with many workers attempting to flee and some even running into a sewage pond and others hiding in air ducts. A Homeland Security Investigation Special Agent described how agents screened each person suspected of being in the country illegally.
Some that illegally crossed the border into the United States, some that came in through visa waiver and were prohibited from working, some that had visas and overstayed their visas. And each individual was questioned on their status. Their documents were checked. Their backgrounds were checked.
Harry Dolls. I need to learn more about that.
A statement sent to CNN last night, Hyundai said the following regarding the immigration raid in Georgia. We are reviewing our processes to ensure that all parties working on our projects maintain the same high standards of legal compliance that we demand of ourselves. This includes thorough vetting of employment practices by contractors and subcontractors. The company also said that Hyundai has zero tolerance for those who don't follow the law. In an interview with CNN, former Deputy Homeland Security Secretary under President Trump, Ken Cuccinelli, said conducting this type of raid is a major undertaking.
There's a lot of work that goes into an operation of this scale and of this depth, including investigation by multiple agencies. Obviously, it takes a lot of investigative manpower. And that's all going on in parallel with a whole bunch of other investigations across the country.
Ken Cuccinelli's still alive? Damn. I thought Satan would be here to collect his soul by now.
The plant that was targeted was built after Hyundai announced an agreement with the state of Georgia in 2022.
What is the Center for Renewing America? It's a neo-fascist think tank. It basically is saying, oh, fascism is palagenic ultranationalism? Well, let us start a think tank called Renewing America to make it very clear that we are fascist. It's the home of national conservatism, chat. They're not national socialists. No. They're national conservatives.
The company called at the time the first dedicated, fully electrified vehicle and battery manufacturing facilities in the United States. The plant was projected to employ 8,500 people once completed, but as you heard a moment ago, they were ordered to stop.
So this delays operations.
For sure.
All right, Rafael Romo, thanks so much. Good to see you.
So basically, Hyundai was going to be building a competitor to Tesla. So they said ICE to shut down a competitor of Tesla, targeting an ally.
All right, the massive ICE raid prompted a sharp response from the South Korean president. CNN's Mike Valerio is in Seoul with more on the reaction there.
Well, the headline from here is certainly that South Korea's president, Lee Jae-myung, is getting
Automotive
involved
units should
in this
strike.
matter.
Yeah, if only these workers were unionized, huh? They would have collective power.
Telling his officials that, quote, all out necessary measures should be done to support Korean nationals in this matter and to resolve it as fast as possible. Now, the split screen from where he was just about 10 days ago is certainly dramatic, considering that he was at the Oval Office meeting with President Trump, talking about new investments that South Korea would make into a reality, making American shipbuilding again, improving investments in manufacturing in the United States. This battery factory, run by Hyundai as a joint venture with the other South Korean giant, LG, is certainly part of that narrative. And now, to see this operation, the biggest of its kind taken in the second Trump administration, it is so striking and has hit such
Why
an
are they
emotional
shackling? Why are they shackling? None of these people are a security threat. Why are they shackling? I mean, why don't you just have them in normal handcuffs or zip ties? Like shackling, what the fuck is this shit?
With a multitude of people here in South Korea, quite astounded that not just one or two or a few dozen South Koreans have been detained as part of this operation, but more than 300, a number confirmed by South Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs today. Along those lines, the Minister of Foreign Affairs has said that if this situation isn't resolved, he could conceivably go to Washington, D.C., saying in part, quote, as we discuss this issue further today, we are also considering dispatching a high-level official to the U.S. to address the situation. If necessary, I, meaning the foreign minister, am prepared to travel to Washington, D.C., personally to engage directly with U.S. officials to resolve this matter. Unclear at the moment what, if any, charges could be filed.
Like, this is fucking crazy. This is actually fucking stupid. We're building a massive, fully electrified electric vehicle factory in Georgia. It's going to have, what, 7,500, 8,500 permanent jobs, billions of dollars of investment. These are people from South Korea, a developed country, an ally of the U.S. I mean, even if there was some immigration law that was being violated in some sort of a bureaucratic sense, right? Like maybe you forgot to file a form correctly. Maybe you miscalculated how many days you were approved to be in the country. Maybe some people came in on business trips and they did more work than the visa technically allows. Who gives a fuck? You go in with an attorney, a lawyer. You sit down with Hyundai's fucking executives. You contact the employees. You bring them in. You inform them that they have this or this error, and you try to resolve it through, a normal and respectful and humane and cheap way of putting a stamp on an envelope and sending a letter instead of sending literal hundreds of agents wasting millions of dollars and then destroy. Like, what the? This is fucking Nazi shit. This is Nazi shit. It's stupid. It's wasteful. It is a humiliation ritual of the South Korean government. It is to dominate somebody who's supposed to be our friend. This is absolutely disgusting. Does anybody not want South Koreans to come to America? Is there anybody who's like, no, man, we don't want any Koreans in America? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? This is batshit fucking crazy. I mean, this is extreme racism.
Will be filed, and how long will it take to release all 300 plus of these South Korean nationals? Again, hitting such a chord with people halfway around the world. Mike Valerio, CNN, Seoul.
South Korean workers held in a U.S. immigration swoop, the latest jolt to a once rock-solid relationship. Turbulence, too, over tariffs and military spending. Is the raid a one-off or a sign of deeper trouble between the two nations? This is Inside Story.
South Korea media response. South Korea's entire media establishment across the political spectrum has united in unprecedented editorial consensus expressing profound betrayal, outrage, national humiliation, and fundamental breach of U.S. Republic of Korea alliance. Mass arrests of Korean workers at Hyundai's Georgia plant. I mean, it is an insult. It is a fucking insult. I don't know what else to say. How long until they are China's new bro? I mean, the general sentiment, while Korean media occasionally unite on domestic issues, they are usually severely politicized. Here, the level of scorn spanning from conservative establishment to progressive outlets is extraordinarily rare. They are furious. Chunsun Ilbo, flagship conservative, scathing language calling this a merciless arrest operation that represents something that cannot happen between allies and a breach of trust. Notes Trump personally thanked Hyundai's chairman just months ago. Chosin calls the situation bewildering and emphasizes the contradiction. Trump pressures Korean companies to invest while simultaneously arresting their workers. The editorial questions whether American investment promises survive across different administrations. Dung Ilbo delivers perhaps the most damning question in its headline. How are we supposed to build factories? While noting Korea was specifically targeted and describing this as a shocking behavior between allies. Dong A asks who would invest under these conditions when Korean workers are treated like a criminal group. Notes that this threatens 17,000 jobs already created by Korean companies in Georgia. The Korean government must demand a pledge from the U.S. to prevent reoccurrence. Describes public being appalled at seeing Koreans dragged away in chains and cable ties. I want to see more of the arrest.
Tonight, new video from inside the dramatic raid.
We have a search warrant for the whole site. We need construction to cease immediately.
DHS agents lining up workers at a Hyundai plant under construction near Savannah, Georgia.
We're supposed to have our ID. If you have it, it's great. You don't need to go grab it if you don't.
Officials say they arrested 475 workers who were in the U.S. illegally.
I live in the area as a Latin. I'm aware that we have a large South Korean and Southeast Asian population. Many South Koreans specifically view themselves as the model minority. We're actively talking shit when seeing this happen to Mexicans, etc. This has been a huge shock to the local area as the wow, didn't know it could happen to us type stuff. Yeah, I mean, listen. I'm not trying to be, I hear you. I want you to fight the liberal inside of you that's saying that shit. I get it. I'm sure there's some conservative South Koreans or conservative Koreans or conservative black people. They represent the vast minority of people. And I'm sure they thought that they were going to be the pick-me. I'm sure there are always pick-me's. There are always people that will sell out and serve as a token. Okay? Like, I want you to not focus on that because that is your literal liberalism inside of you. It's gross. These workers are not those people. These workers are not the people that were taunting Mexicans or Latin people being arrested in Georgia, okay? These are regular working class people trying to do a job to put food on the table for their families. Do not think about some conservative Korean you know who's an asshole, all right? That's liberalism. That is something in your mind that is trying to convince you not to show solidarity with these people. It is trying to divide you along a racial or national category where you have a consistent interest, a common interest, an opportunity for solidarity, an opportunity for unity. Take this chance. Step in and go, we know what it's like to be targeted by ICE. We know what it's like as immigrants to be unfairly detained and treated like garbage. This is an opportunity to raise consciousness and raise unity, not to say I told you so. Okay, let's save that till after we win. All right, after we win, everybody buys a Mike was right shirt. It says Mike was right first. Mike is the best. I trust Mike. But now is the time not for me to prance around about how correct I am. Now is the time to show solidarity and empathy and sympathy.
The largest single site enforcement operation in Homeland Security history.
This operation underscores our commitment to protecting jobs for Georgians and Americans.
Honestly,
Officials say the majority.
This is one of those things that is so fucking disgusting. And so this is just this is just evil. This is just like some people like wonder, what does evil look like? This is evil. So there's a lot of leftists who recoil from the idea of using the words good or evil. And they're like, those are, those are just those are religious, pseudo-religious concepts, Mike. I can't believe you as an atheistic socialist are using evil to describe human actions. And it's like, fuck you, shut the fuck up, nerd, r/atheist idiot, fuck you. The reason why I use the term evil, I'll explain what I mean by that, is this is not being done for some sort of grander purpose or narrative, except for two. One, it's an expression of white supremacist domination. And two, to satisfy the sadistic urges of the Gestapo ICE agents. This isn't some sort of like thing that's being done because there's some sort of big immigration abuse that is hurting America, or, like this factory is actually bad for the country and bad for, these workers are doing something to like hurt people. No. This is being done because it feels good to dominate people for the sick, sadistic pleasure and the feeling of power and domination within the minds of the right-wing white racist. That, for me, is evil. When you're doing harm to people and you're actually stopping them from doing something good, which is building the country's first fully electrified EV plant. That's going to create 7,500 good-paying jobs. Think of 7,500 households that are now not going to have those good paying jobs. Think about all of the good that would have come out of that. All of that has been attacked for what? For the ritual of humiliating these people because of their race and their nationality. That's what makes it evil.
Majority of those arrested are South Korean nationals and worked for contractors and subcontractors, not for Hyundai directly. Hyundai posting it complies with, quote, all laws and regulations wherever we operate. President Trump backing the DHS operation.
They were illegal aliens, and ICE was just doing its job.
It comes as the Trump administration is signaling it will step up its crackdown on illegal immigration with expanded ICE operations in Chicago. NBC's Shaquille Brewster is...
Chat, I don't want you ever to say, I don't want anybody to think, oh, I'm not Mexican. I'm not Latin. This doesn't apply to me. Yes, it fucking does. Yes, it fucking does.
There.
Organizers of Chicago's Mexican Independence Day parade tell us that they're going to have volunteers all along the parade route with phones, radios, and even whistles to alert if they see federal agents.
The intensifying ICE action sparking mixed reactions.
Our community is under attack. Let's be clear. President Trump wants a confrontation.
As far as deportations, they have criminal records. They should not be here.
Meanwhile, the South Korean government is responding to the ICE raid, saying, quote, the rights and interests of our nationals must not be unfairly violated.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.
South Korea's foreign.
Take a more look at the actual raid. Look at all the vehicles. Look how much money is being spent. Try to understand the amount of money that was spent as well. Look at these up-armored vehicles. Why do they have MRAPs?
GSP in position, north side.
Keep coming this way, please.
They're like, come on in, guys. Come on in. The water's fine. All because they feel so cool LARPing as fucking soldiers, dude. As a vet, this is fucking pathetic to watch. Oh, you got a radio and a gun and a vest. Fucking loser shit. Not only that, honestly, it looks like uncool airsoft guys.
If it wasn't for that... Worried about the guns.
I thought the lazy illegals were just sitting on welfare and taking our benefits, chat. Actually, they're building our 21st century EV factories. Thank God they stopped this.
Any weapons in you?
No, sir.
No belt?
Did you see the ICE agent hiring lines? No. A Republican candidate is claiming they called ICE. This is honestly, guys, someone who is just trying to get attention, and it's working because you guys really want me to watch it. He's probably lying.
Do you see this raid at the Hyundai construction site? Well, this woman is allegedly responsible for the raid. Listen to what she had to say.
So there were 452 illegals, and I was the one that reported.
So this is Tori Branham, a Republican candidate for Georgia's 12th congressional district, who as a politician should have thought about how shutting down the single biggest economic investment made by a company in Georgia's history would affect her constituents. This was confirmed by Rolling Stone, and according to the report, Tori recruited a Spanish-speaking union worker who had access to the site to become her informant. After hearing rumors of the construction site using undocumented labor and 3 worker deaths at the site. Ironically, the other workers trusted this union worker because
I had a coworker last week that was in my face because I was talking about a friend who went to China recently. He was talking about how nice it is over there. And he was saying we should all quit our jobs and take the 50K sign-on bonus for ICE. Anyway, your coworker got arrested for child porn over the weekend? Oh, pedocon theory is a fact. Not a theory. It's a theory like gravity is a theory.
That previously helped them win lawsuits against unsafe work conditions. So Tori took the rumors and the information from the informants and gave it to authorities. Authorities did say that this was a part of a months-long investigation with multiple agencies, but did not mention that this was started by Tori. When I first saw her video, I knew that she had no actual sympathy for the workers, because if she did, she would have found a way to hold the corporation accountable and not send the Gestapo goon after the workers.
Meanwhile, chat, take a look at this. G acclaims AI expert Andrew Yao, who renounces U.S. citizenship after return to China. American Mathematical Society fellow Li Hanfang joins China's Chongqing University. Leading mathematician returns to China to take up prestigious role as U.S. funding cuts prompt brain drain. Award-winning data scientist Shi Yi Wan takes job in China after decades in U.S. The statistician whose research covers machine learning and big data analysis leaves Florida for the Westlake University. Award-winning scientists give up U.S. nationality to become a Chinese citizens. State media reports include a joint winner of the Nobel Prize of Physics. Nanotech pioneer Wang Zonglin leaves U.S. to work in China full-time. The father of nano generators and one of the most influential scientists in the United States takes role at Beijing Institute. Registered nuclear physicist Li Shang leaves U.S. for China in fusion energy quest. Plasma specialist heads to Peking University to pursue magnetic confinement on mission to make nuclear fusion a reality. Star mathematician Sun Song leaves U.S. for China. The 36-year-old Chinese-born geometer has joined the faculty at the Institute for Advanced Study in Mathematics, the latest in a string of high-profile appointments as the institute aims to become a world-class math center. Prize-winning U.S. physicist Gao Huan returned to China after decades overseas. Master researchers, the expert in solid mechanics, said he is thrilled to be back in China and hopes to inspire students to do cutting-edge research. Will you leave U.S. for China? It depends. Mathematician Terrence Tao says Trump funding cuts have left the situation more fluid and unstable than at any time in the last 30 years, Tao says. Bro, what are you going to do about that brain drain?
Minister will head to the US as the two countries deal with the fallout of last week's massive immigration raid in Georgia. The US and South Korea have struck a deal to send roughly 300 workers home after they were detained by federal agents. The workers were among 475 people detained on Thursday during a large-scale raid at a plant jointly operated by South Korea-based China-based companies Hyundai and LG Energy Solution. CNN's Mike Valerio joins me now from Seoul with more on this. Good to see you, Mike. So what's been the reaction to all of this in South Korea?
Rosemary, I think the best way to capture the reaction is to describe people being astonished. Astonished to see the treatment of their citizens. And really, I think that there is, from the people we talk to on the streets of Seoul, when we're looking at social media and opinion columns in the newspapers, there certainly is the understanding that every country needs to uphold its immigration laws. But what people don't seem to understand when we're doing interviews is why couldn't ICE, from their point of view, go to this mega facility and say, you know what, I think there was a problem with XYZ section of your visa for this person and that person. The way that this was handled, showing up without warning and putting chains around people's waists, leading them out with handcuffs, and then leading them out to detention, that certainly has struck an emotional chord with people. And describing that emotional chord, it's certainly an undercurrent of unease. America is such a friend to South Korea, with nearly 30,000 troops who are stationed here on the Korean Peninsula as a counter to China and North Korea. Trade and cultural ties very strong. And then you have this, that certainly is leading people in business to question, how will investments go forward? How exactly will they position their people going forward? In case in point, we had LG Energy Solution, the company that is partnering with Hyundai, at least in the EV battery part of this mega facility in Georgia, suspending most business trips until further notice and telling their people, Rosemary, that if they are in the United States, they either need to remain in their accommodations or come home immediately. And as we wrap up here, the broader context of this all happened fewer than 2 weeks after South Korea's president, Lee Jae-myung, was in the White House, in the Oval Office, having a good meeting with President Trump, touting all...
See, the one thing I would say is, this assumes that, like, Donald Trump is even in control of shit. Like, this is the thing about fascism that I think people kind of underestimate, is Donald Trump isn't really in control of this shit. He's incompetent. He's lazy. He hired a bunch of people based on the fact that they kiss his ass, and they're going out there and they're doing their own policies, and he doesn't give a shit. You can kiss Donald Trump's ass all you want. It's not going to save you from the fascist racists that are out there trying to target immigrants. Maybe Trump can intervene after the fact, but there's no way for this arbitrary shit to ever be countered because he's too lazy and stupid.
All of the investment possibilities of how South Korea could help make American manufacturing and industry great again. So when you have this unfolding, certainly officials here in Seoul are trying to resolve this as quickly as possible. We do see President Trump posting on Truth a few hours ago saying that all foreign international investment is welcome. He wants people to be in the United States legally. So in sum, it's just the manner that this was done, again, striking a chord with people, and we're waiting to see when exactly the more than 300 people are set to return to South Korea. It could be towards the middle of this week, but we're still firming up our reporting on that front.
I know you'll be watching that closely. Mike Valerio joining us there. Many thanks. Appreciate it.
This morning, South Korea is working to secure the safe return of hundreds of citizens after they were caught up in an immigration...
Okay, we're at the development of the solar portion of this Hyundai project. Chances are all those Korea guys are not here illegally. They were all construction managers. I mean, here illegally means a lot of different things. It could simply mean that a person came here and there was some sort of error in their paperwork. You know what I mean? Like, they just arrested everybody who was South Korean. It's not very complicated.
Immigration raid last week, a dramatic scene on Thursday when...
And because they're not Americans, conservatives say, well, they don't have constitutional rights. You're not an American, therefore you shouldn't have any constitutional right to a fair trial or due process, right? So all these people, even people who are here illegally, they're being denied due process. They could just be deported. And that's what conservatives think is a good idea. You come to this country, you follow all the rules, you get all the papers, and then ICE could just arrest you and deport you and claim you're not American, and there's nobody who's going to look over it. That's what's happening here. It's not just that people maybe made a bureaucratic error. It's that they're just being targeted because they're immigrants, legal or not.
Federal agents executed a raid on a Hyundai facility and battery plant in Georgia, arresting 475 people, a majority of them South Korean nationals. The raid was the largest single-site immigration enforcement operation in DHS history. Now, the White House is warning more large-scale worksite raids will follow. This moment, as a new NBC poll shows 47% approve of the president's handling of border security and immigration, with slightly less, 43%, approving when it comes to his aggressive deportation program. NBC News legal affairs reporter Gary Grumbach is joining us now. Gary, what more do we know about who was detained and plans for deporting them?
So this is a story with massive foreign relations implications and also massive economic implications here. We know that 475 people, most of them were South Koreans, are now currently sitting in an ICE facility in Georgia in a search warrant that was unsealed Friday. We know that the government was looking for 4 individuals who were not South Koreans. Now, we don't know what the relationship is between the hundreds and hundreds of South Koreans and those 4 individuals, but there was discussion of potential violation of federal laws, including harboring aliens and unlawful employment practices. Now, no charges have been filed yet, but in terms of removing these folks from this country, the South Koreans are actually helping out with that. The foreign minister is on his way to the U.S. as we speak, and we expect he is going to be part of the chartering of flights that are going to come from Georgia back to South Korea. The South Korea foreign minister saying, in part, it's essential to ensure that such an event never happens again and to work with the U.S. side to establish fundamental countermeasures here.
Okay, Gary, thank you for laying it out for us. Our next guest is an immigration attorney representing several of the workers detained in that raid on Thursday. Joining us now is Charles Cook from the American Immigration Lawyers Association. Charles, thanks for joining us. What else can you tell us about who you're representing and why do you think they were targeted?
We represent several employees from different Korean companies that were engaged in the plant construction and development. One thing I think that's been unclear through all this is why did ICE and a specific part of the ICE HSI go to this plant? As the reporter mentioned, they were looking for 4 Latino workers. That's it. In fact, when ICE went to this plant, we have now found out they didn't understand that there were a lot of Koreans there. The Koreans were never part of the plan, which is why they didn't even bring a single Korean translator with them. It turns out that the vast majority of these Korean workers weren't pounding nails. They weren't building facilities. They were working on what's called after-sales service and installation pursuant to valid visas in the United States. Every one of these individuals had entered on a visa. They had told Customs and Border Protection why they were here. For those that actually had visas as opposed to ESTA, they had gone to the consulate and explained they were working for companies that were selling the parts of the plant that create the batteries from their foreign companies. It turns out there's only 3.
I fucking told you, chat. I fucking told you. I mean, these incompetent fascists are stupid. I told you they're fucking stupid. I told you they don't know what's going on. I told you that these people were probably here legally or at most had a minor paperwork error. But because they're foreign nationals and apparently the Constitution doesn't apply anymore, this is why due process exists. Now these people are put in fucking shackles.
Companies in the entire world that actually make the equipment that allows you to make batteries. And none of those companies are in the United States. These individuals were working for those companies in installing the plant so the plant could then employ U.S. workers.
I want to play what President Trump said when he was asked about this Hyundai raid yesterday.
The way you train people is bring people in that know what they're doing and let them stay for a little while and help. So I'm going to look at that. It's a very interesting situation that took place in Georgia. And we heard about it yesterday. At the same time, ICE was doing right because they were here illegally. But we do have to work something out where we bring in experts so that our people can be trained so that they can do it themselves.
So what's your reaction to that? Does it seem to fit with your clients' stories?
Well, it kind of does. I mean, initially, the president said they were here doing exactly what they were supposed to be doing on valid visas. Then he switched to undocumented workers, which there may have actually been undocumented workers on the website. I know from other clients that we have that are Latinos, they arrested at least one DACA recipient, one TPS recipient, and several asylum recipients that had valid work visas. It seems to me that ICE just decided to arrest everybody on the site and sort it out later. And that goes to the point of who was involved in the raid. ICE, you would think, is just one organization, but it's not. ICE has both HSI, which are Homeland Security Investigations, which generally do worksite enforcement, and ERO, that's the people that do the removals. It's ERO that are the experts on immigration law. HSI is not. The vast majority of these individuals should never have been arrested. And that's actually the big concern, I think, of Korea here, is these people had followed the law. They had come legally. And if ICE now says, well, you can leave, but you can't come back, that's a massive blow both to the companies, but also to the United States. We need this battery plant here. We want this battery plant. It's going to create thousands of jobs, but not without this initial brief involvement of foreign workers who are specialists in installing the necessary equipment.
And so now if they are being deported, what kind of repercussions could this have for the American economy? Do you think it's going to backfire on the Trump administration?
Oh, this is clearly going to delay the construction of this plant. It's going to delay the installation of the equipment. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of Koreans are going to tell their employers, I don't want to go to that country. It's crazy right now. They don't know what they're doing. So there are going to be serious both foreign policy implications as well as physical money implications here in Georgia.
Charles Cook, appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much for taking the time.
My pleasure. Thank you, Anna.
I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to say other than, uh-oh, ladies and gentlemen, we have a Supreme Court of the United States staying a district court decision. The application for stay presented to Justice Kagan and by her referred to the court as granted. The July 11, 2025 order entered by the United States District Court for the Central District of California is stayed pending the disposition of the appeal of the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit and disposition of a petition for writ of cert. If such a writ is timely sought, should cert be denied, the stay shall terminate automatically. In the event cert is granted, the stay shall terminate upon the sending down of the judgment of this court. I vote to grant the government's application for an interim stay pending appeal of the district court's injunction. The Immigration and Nationality Act authorizes, this just came down, chat, authorizes immigration officers to interrogate any alien or person believed to be an alien as to his right or to be or to remain in the United States. Immigration officers may, quote, briefly detain an individual for questioning if they have, quote, a reasonable suspicion based on specific articulable facts that the person being questioned is an alien illegally in the United States. The reasonable suspicion inquiry turns on the totality of the particular circumstances. The government estimates that 15 million people are in the U.S. illegally, many millions illegally entered or illegally overstayed just in the past few years. Illegal immigration is especially pronounced in the Los Angeles area, among other locales in the United States. About 10% of the people in Los Angeles region are illegally in the United States, meaning that 2 million illegal immigrants out of a total population of 20 million. Not surprisingly, given those extraordinary numbers, U.S. immigration officers have prioritized immigration enforcement in the Los Angeles area. The government sometimes makes brief investigative stops to check the immigration status of those who gather in locations where people are hired for day jobs, who work or appear to work at jobs such as construction, landscaping, agriculture, or car washes that often do not require paperwork and are therefore attractive to illegal immigrants, and who do not speak much, if any, English. If the officers learn that the individual they stopped is a U.S. citizen or otherwise lawfully in the United States, they promptly let the individual go. If the individual is illegally in the United States, the officers may arrest the individual and initiate the process for removal. Immigration stops based on reasonable suspicion of illegal presence have been an important component of U.S. immigration enforcement for decades, across several presidential administrations. So basically, this is conservative slop for... You're allowed to arrest people for speaking Spanish and looking brown. That's what this is saying. That ICE could just arrest anybody who's brown. In this case, however, the district court enjoined U.S. immigration officers from making investigative stops in the Los Angeles area when the stops are based on the following factors or combination of factors. 1, presence at particular locations such as bus stops, car washes, day labor pickup sites, agricultural sites, and the like, and the type of work one does. And 3, speaking Spanish or speaking English with an accent, and apparent race or ethnicity. So they said, hey, you can't just stop people because they're brown and poor and speaking Spanish. And ICE was like, well, they're riding a bus. That means they're an illegal immigrant. The government contends that the injunction will substantially hamper its efforts to enforce the immigration laws of the Los Angeles area. The government has therefore asked this court to stay the district court's injunction. To obtain a stay from this court, the moving party must demonstrate a fair prospect that if the district court's decision were affirmed on appeal, this court would grant cert and reverse. The moving party also must show a likelihood that it would suffer irreparable harm if a stay were not granted. In my view, the government has made a sufficient showing to obtain a stay pending appeal. Wow, man. Thanks so much for the argument. To begin with, given the significance of the issue of the government's immigration enforcement efforts, this court would likely grant cert if the Court of Appeals affirmed the district court's injunction. In addition, on 2 alternative grounds, the government has demonstrated a fair prospect of reversal. Oh, okay. What's the fair prospect? I can't wait to hear the argument. Oh my God. This is the dumbest argument I've ever seen. First, under this court's decision in Los Angeles versus Lyons from 1983, plaintiffs likely lack Article 3 standing to seek a broad injunction restricting immigration officers from taking these investigative stops. In Lyons, the court held that standing to obtain future injunctive relief does not exist merely because plaintiffs experience past harm and fear its reoccurrence. What matters is the reality of the threat of repeated injury, not subjective apprehensions. So what they're saying here is, oh, were you a brown person that was illegally arrested by ICE because you're poor or at a bus stop? Well, what are the chances that happens again? Pretty low. Therefore, we're not going to stop them from doing the illegal arrests. That's the argument. That's the fucking argument. We're not going to say they can't do that illegal shit anymore because the chances of it happening to you specifically again are pretty low. What? This may be the worst argument I've ever read in my entire life. They're doing it as a pattern and practice. It is officially what ICE is doing. They're going around illegally arresting a bunch of brown people for speaking Spanish all over the place. They're doing it over and over again. This wasn't a one-off. It is policy. It's guaranteed to happen again. What the fuck are you talking about? Wow, this is shocking. This is shockingly stupid. Plaintiff's standing theory largely tracks the theory rejected in Lyons. Like in Lyons, plaintiffs here allege that they were the subjects of unlawful law enforcement actions in the past, namely being stopped for immigration questioning, allegedly without reasonable suspicion of an unlawful presence. And in Lyons, plaintiffs seek a forward-looking injunction to enjoin law enforcers from stopping them without reasonable suspicion in the future. But like in Lyons, plaintiffs have no good basis to believe that law enforcement will unlawfully stop them in the future based on prohibitive factors, and certainly no good basis for believing they had that any stop of the plaintiffs is imminent. So in other words, the court is saying, well, yes, they illegally stopped you, and yes, they were caught, but are they going to do it to you again? And it's like, yes, it's ICE policy, dumb fuck. They're going around rounding up brown people speaking Spanish as policy, and it's happening constantly. What the fuck are you talking about? I'm a brown, you know, they would say that they fit the profile. That's an illegal profile. This is Nazism. This is basically the end of the 4th and 5th Amendment. This is just Nazism. This is Nazism. Therefore, they lack Article 3 standing, absent a sufficient likelihood that the plaintiffs will again be wronged in a similar way. This is complete subjective bullshit. Listen, I'm a legal realist. I predicted all of this would happen. I told you everything. I told you it was all going to happen. I told you the Supreme Court. I mean, I had a crash out 3 years ago telling you, because a bunch of liberals prior to the Roe v. Wade decision being overturned, they were going like, the Supreme Court they'll stand for the institution. They'll stand for stare decisis. And they were all shocked as the 6-3 conservative court continued to hand down super precedent overturning decisions after decision after decision after decision. And I told you those people were going to be wrong. I predicted they were going to be wrong. And we were right. Did I get hired as a legal analyst at NBC after I completely was right about everything? No. Who gives a fuck? Mike was right. That's racist for you to say that. You're not allowed to make firm predictions about Supreme Court jurisprudence and then be correct and then point it out. You're not allowed to do that. They are no more entitled to an injunction than any other citizen of Los Angeles, and a federal court may not entertain a claim by any or all citizens who no more than assert that certain practices of law enforcement officers are unconstitutional. Plaintiff's standing theory is especially deficient in this case because immigration officers also use their experience to stop suspected illegal immigrants based on a variety of factors. So even if the government had a policy of making stops based on factors prohibited by the district court, immigration officers might not only rely on those factors if and when they stop plaintiffs in the future. In other words, they'll say, even if we did say you can't stop people because of their race or language, they'll stop you for some other good reason that we don't articulate and we made up. Guys, this is lawless. This is, as somebody who has read thousands of Supreme Court cases, this is one of the most poorly argued injunctions I've ever seen in my entire life. This is actually, I mean, I don't know if there's some lawyers in the chat, but this is dog shit. This is like, honestly, I am so mad I paid for law school education. It's completely meaningless. It's completely meaningless. This makes getting a Juris Doctorate completely meaningless. You know how you interpret the court? You know how you interpret law now? What does Trump want? That's all you need to know. What does Trump want? That's the decision. This is one of the worst decisions and arguments I've ever seen. I mean, it's a typical SCOTUS from the last, 6 years. But now it's getting to the point of just patently stupid. Second, even if plaintiffs had standing, the government has a fair prospect of succeeding in the Fourth Amendment issue. To stop an individual for brief questioning about immigration status, the government must have reasonable suspicion that the individual is illegally present in the U.S. Reasonable suspicion is a lesser requirement than probable cause. It is considerably short of the preponderance of the evidence standard. Whether an officer has reasonable suspicion depends on the totality of the circumstances. Those circumstances include that there is an extremely high number and percentage of illegal immigrants in the Los Angeles area. So in other words, they're allowed to stop any brown person in LA because there's supposedly a lot of immigrants in LA. These same motherfuckers will say that the Constitution is colorblind, by the way. These are the same motherfuckers who are like, man, you can't do affirmative action because that's racist. But now they're saying any brown person in LA can be stopped based on the fact that they're brown. This is fascism. I don't know what else to say, guys. I'm sorry. It's fucking Jover. That those individuals tend to gather in certain locations to seek daily work. Oh, are you trying to get a job? We can stop you. And that those individuals often work at certain types of jobs such as day labor, landscaping, agriculture, and construction. Oh, do you work in construction? You don't have constitutional rights anymore. If this doesn't look like a dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, if this doesn't look like fucking fascism to you, what will? We're doing a genocide and we're reducing people's rights based on their race. What the fuck is going on? That do not require paperwork and are therefore especially attractive to illegal immigrants. And many of these illegally in the United States, Los Angeles area come from Mexico or Central America and do not speak much English. So in other words, we're discriminating against them based on national origin, which is against federal law. You're not allowed to do that. To be clear, apparent ethnicity alone cannot furnish reasonable suspicion under the court's case law regarding immigration stops. However, it can be a relevant factor when considered along with other salient factors. They are literally saying they're allowed to use your race. They're saying they could use your race. They're saying as long as it's ICE, they could use your race. Under these courts' precedents, not to mention common sense. Common sense, guys. Those circumstances taken together could constitute at least reasonable suspicion of illegal presence. So in other words, are you Mexican and are you brown and did I hear Spanish? That's enough to arrest. Importantly, reasonable suspicion means only that immigration officers may briefly stop the individual, inquire about immigration status. If the person is a U.S. citizen or otherwise lawfully in the United States, that individual will be free to go after a brief encounter. Only if the person is illegal in the United States may the stop lead to further immigration proceedings. How can you prove that, you dumb fuck? This is, oh my God. Chat, I'm about to become problematic. Chat, I'm about to become problematic. This is dumb as fuck. No, this was Kavanaugh, chat. It's at the top of the page. Kavanaugh concurring. In short, given this court's precedents, the government has demonstrated a fair prospect of success both on standing and Fourth Amendment grounds. I couldn't disagree more. I mean, I know that law is meaningless and words don't mean anything and everything is socially mediated and everything's about social shit and not about arguments. And I know I'm autistic and I care about facts and logic and evidence and argument and logical coherency, but this is absolutely babble. To conclude otherwise, the court would likely have to override or significantly narrow two separate lines of precedence: the Lyons line of cases with respect to standing and the Brignoti-Ponce line of cases with respect to immigration stops based on reasonable suspicion. In this interim posture, plaintiffs have not made a persuasive argument for the court to overrule or narrow either line of precedent, much less both of them. The government has also demonstrated that it would likely suffer irreparable harm if the district court's injunction is not stayed. As the court has indicated, anytime the government is enjoined by a court from effectuating statute enacted by representatives of its people, it suffers a form of irreparable injury. This is a Trump opinion. A Trump slip opinion. I mean, okay, how do I explain this to non-lawyers and non-law students and non-attorneys? This is the equivalent of me going to your bank, taking all your money, and then when you say, hey, you're not allowed to do that, I say, no, I have proof. Here, come with me in this other room, and then just farting in your face. So in this case, particularly given the millions of individuals illegally in the United States, the myriad significant economic and social problems caused by illegal immigration, and the government's efforts to prioritize stricter enforcement of immigration laws enacted by Congress, notably, moreover, the district court's injunction threatens contempt sanctions against immigration officers who make brief investigative stops later found by the court to violate the injunction. The prospect of such after-the-fact judicial second-guessing and contempt proceedings will inevitably chill lawful immigration enforcement efforts. On the two most critical factor, therefore, the government has demonstrated that a stay is warranted, turning then to the balance of harms and equities. As with many other applications for interim relief to this court, the harms and equities may appear weighty on both sides. In these circumstances, to borrow Justice Scalia's apt words from a different context, trying to determine whether one party's harms or equities outweigh another party's can be akin to judging whether a particular line is longer than a particular rock is heavy. So in other words, they're just disregarding precedential requirements to balance the equities because they're claiming it's too hard for their dumb conservative pea brain. If you don't have abject contempt for every conservative, you are a fucking brain dead moron. If you don't see these people as the up-jumped bullshitters and fascists that they are, you are brain dead. If you think any of this makes sense, you are a fucking enemy of humanity. This is dumber than dirt. This is evil. This is patently arbitrary and capricious and clearly in violation of any laws against discrimination based on national origin or race. What the fuck are you talking about? Moreover, in a case of this involving government action, balancing the harms and equities can become especially difficult and policy-laden. This is because a court must balance the harms of the regulated and negatively affected parties, not only against the harms of the government as an institution, but also against the harms to the third parties who would otherwise benefit from the challenged government action. So in other words, we're going to invade a bunch of human beings' rights because of invented bullshit? I have never seen a worse decision in my life. This is basically, I don't know why, like, chat, if you're not fucking apoplectically angry, I'm failing. I am failing to teach you what you need to know. This is one of the most evil decisions I've read in a very long time. This is basically the dissolving of the kind of Bill of Rights. It's insane. In any event, the balance of harms and equities in this case tips in favor of the government. The interests of individuals who are illegally in the country and avoiding being stopped by law enforcement for questioning is ultimately an interest in evading the law. We're talking about people who are not here illegally, you dumb fuck, who are brown. And even if people who are here illegally, you have to follow the law. You don't get to just arrest every black person and go, well, if they don't have any drugs, then we'll let them go. That's the fucking point. That's called a general warrant. It's why we fought the fucking revolution. It's in the it's in the Declaration of Independence, you dumb fuck. This is like, what? To be sure, I recognize and fully appreciate that many, but not all, but many illegal immigrants come to the United States to escape poverty and lack of freedom and opportunities in their home countries and to make better lives for themselves and their families. And I understand that they may feel somewhat misled by very U.S. approaches to immigration enforcement over the last few decades. But the fact remains that under the laws passed by Congress and the president, they are acting illegally by remaining in the United States, at least unless Congress and the president choose some other legislative approach to legalize some or all of those individuals now illegally present in the country. And by illegally immigrating into and remaining in the country, they're not only violating the immigration laws, but also jumping in front of those non-citizens who follow the rules and wait in line to immigrate to the United States through the legal immigration process. There's no such thing. This is a complete bullshit. There is no such line. This is complete and utter horseshit. That's why there's no citation, because it's fucking bullshit. This, ladies and gentlemen, is what we like to call dicta, in the sense that it is meaningless babble inserted for political argumentation. What the fuck are you talking about? For those reasons, non-cited, non-factual bullshit, the interests of illegal immigrants in evading and questioning, and thus evading detection of their illegal presence, are not particularly substantial as a legal matter. This is the destruction of rule of law. Rule of law does not exist to make it easier for law enforcement to catch every criminal. Rule of law and the Bill of Rights exists to protect everyone's dignity, to be secure in their person and in their papers, without due process of law? You fucking dumb rat. You don't get to search people because, well, we'll catch some criminals. I have a right to be left alone, you scumbag piece of shit. Fuck you. What the fuck is this? Moreover, as for stops of those individuals who are illegally in the country, the questioning of those circumstances is typically brief, and those individuals may promptly go free after making clear to immigration officers they are U.S. citizens or otherwise illegally in the United States. Uncited babble. What are you talking about? What? I didn't bring my ID today. Okay, you're going to immigration detention. Well, why did you stop me? You're brown and speak Spanish. That's fucking tyranny, you scumbag. Finally, although the dissent emphasizes the force allegedly used by immigration officers, that is not the issue in the case. The district court enjoined the government from stopping individuals for questioning based on several enumerated factors. The injunction is silent as to the use of force, and it's not necessary for the injunction to... How do you think stops happen, dumbass? How do you get people to stop? You threaten them, you dumb fuck. Otherwise, why do I stop? Just keep fucking walking. Walk away, because they threaten to beat your ass. What the fuck are you talking about, you stupid piece of shit? Use of force is implicit in a stop. That's why they call it a stop. I don't know what else to say. I'm losing it. This is dumber than dirt. They're stupid. What the fuck are you talking about? And it's not necessary for the injunction to arrest that use of force question because the Fourth Amendment reasonableness standard continues to govern the officer's use of force and to prohibit excessive force. Are you an illegal? Fuck you, man. Keeps walking. Tased, beaten, thrown in prison. Turns out you're an American citizen. Oh, sorry, you should have stopped. Why'd you stop me? Well, you're brown and speak Spanish. Or you worked in construction. To the extent that excessive force has been used, the Fourth Amendment prohibits such action, and remedies should be available in federal court, except you guys have made it illegal because you have broadly interpreted qualified immunity. So it's basically impossible to sue these fuckers for violating your rights because you've massively expanded qualified immunity. You fucking lying sack of shit, uncited scum. How long is this uncited section? How many paragraphs do you get uncited? What the fuck? We're on like 3 pages of uncited bullshit. I agree with the dissent on that point. But to reiterate, this injunction against brief stops for questioning does not address the use of force issue. In short, the balance of harms and equities favors the government. Especially the immigration cases like this, it's also important to stress the proper role of the judiciary. The judiciary does not set immigration policy or decide enforcement priorities. It should have come as no surprise that some administrations may be more laissez-faire in enforcing immigration law and that other administrations more strict. Article 3 judges may have views on which policy approach is better or fairer, but judges are not appointed to make policy calls. We merely ensure in justicable cases that the executive branch acts within confines of the Constitution and federal statutes. Just as this court a few years ago declined to step outside our constitutionally assigned role to improperly compel greater executive branch enforcement of the immigration laws, we likewise must decline to step outside our constitutionally assigned role to improperly restrict reasonable executive branch enforcement of the immigration laws. Consistency and neutrality are hallmarks of good judging, and in my view, we abide those by entering judicial values, in this case, by granting the stay. In sum, the government has demonstrated a fair prospect of success on the merits and has met the other factors for an interim stay pending appeal of the district court's injunction. I therefore vote to grant the government's application. I don't know how to explain it. But ladies and gentlemen, we have a Gestapo on our streets. What does uncited mean? Typically, when you make a legal argument, you cite to other cases. Okay? See how it's like ECF doc. See how like you see pages 5, 6, page 6, ECF. You see like them constantly citing things, right? This is in the dissent. Here, let me read some of the dissent. Oh my God. Justice Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson dissenting. In early June, the government launched immigration enforcement raids across Los Angeles and its surrounding counties. During the raids, teams of armed and masked agents pulled up to car washes, tow yards, farms, and parks and began seizing individuals on site, often before asking a single question. A federal district court found that these raids were part of a pattern of conduct by the government that likely violated the Fourth Amendment. Based on the evidence before it, the court held that the government was stopping individuals based solely on 4 factors: their apparent race or ethnicity, whether they spoke Spanish or English with an accent, the type of location at which they were found, such as car wash or bus stop, and the type of job they appeared to work. Including that stops based on these 4 factors alone, even when taken together, could not satisfy the Fourth Amendment's requirement of reasonable suspicion. The district court temporarily enjoined the government for continuing its pattern of unlawful mass arrests while it considered whether longer-term relief was appropriate. Instead of allowing the district court to consider these troubling allegations in the normal course, a majority of this court decides to take the once extraordinary step of staying the district court's order. That decision is yet another grave misuse of our emergency docket. We should not have to live in a country where the government can seize anyone who looks Latino, speaks Spanish, and appears to work a low-wage job. Rather than sit idly by while our constitutional freedoms are lost, I dissent. In early June, the government launched Operation at Large in Los Angeles, deploying roving patrols of armed and masked immigration agents to local car washes, Home Depots, tow yards, bus stops, farms, recycling centers, churches, and parks. Over the course of the next month, the government made nearly 2,800 immigration-related arrests and detained many more. For instance, on June 9th, immigration agents arrived at a tow yard in Montebello carrying handguns and military rifles. Jason Gavadia, a Latino U.S. citizen, was working on his car in the tow yard that day. A masked agent ordered Gavadia to stop right there and begin asking him questions. Agents then asked Gavadia whether he is an American at least 3 times. 3 times, Gavadia affirmed that he is. Unsatisfied, the agents asked Gavadia for the name of the hospital in which he was born, and when Gavadia could not immediately recall, the agents racked a rifle, took Gavadia's phone, pushed him up against the metal-grated face, put his hands behind his back, and twisted his arm. Agents released Gavadia only after he offered up his real ID. The ID was never returned to him. Less than 10 miles away in Whittier, immigration agents raided a car wash managed by U.S. citizen Jorge Viramontes. I tried, chat. I can't speak Spanish at all. In the 9 days between June 9th and 19th, agents returned 4 times each instance in the middle of the workday. On one occasion, an agent questioned Viramonte, asking if he is a citizen and requesting that he show his ID. He replied that he is a dual U.S. and Mexican citizen and supplied his California driver's license. The agent said his ID was insufficient, grabbed his arm, escorted him to a vehicle, and drove him to a warehouse area for further questioning. By the way, chat, this is the reasonable suspicion. 2 American citizens abused and their rights violated, and they decided to overturn the stay. Agents detained Viramonte for 20 minutes while they made calls to verify his U.S. citizenship and examined his Mexican ID before eventually driving him back to work. Other Operation at Large encounters have included even more force and even fewer questions. For example, agents pulled up in 4 unmarked cars to a bus stop in Pasadena. The doors opened and the men in masks with guns started running at 3 Latino men who were having their morning coffee, waiting to be picked up for work. In Glendale, nearly a dozen masked agents with guns jumped out of cars at Home Depot and began chasing and tackling Latino day laborers without identifying themselves as ICE or police, asking questions, or saying anything else. In downtown Los Angeles, agents jumped out of a van, rushed up to a tamale vendor, surrounded him, handled him violently, all without asking any questions. Masked agents with guns ran out of the vehicles and rushed toward the workers at a car wash. 3 masked agents wearing bulletproof vests got out with a car with rifles at Home Depot and tear gassed the crowd. The operation has sparked panic and fear across Los Angeles and its surrounding areas. Some have likened the detentions to kidnappings. One Latino U.S. citizen feels like he needs to carry his passport for protection in case federal agents stop him again. Another Latino U.S. citizen similarly worries that as a visibly Latino man, he could be detained if he does not carry his passport, but decided against doing so because he believes that as an American, he should not have to live like that in his own country. Many are struggling to make ends meet because they're afraid to go to work, reluctant to attend school meetings, and pick up their children from school for fear of being detained. Giovannia Viramontes and 3 other individuals stopped during Operation at Large. The Four Association filed this putative class action against Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem and other senior federal immigration enforcement officials. As relevant, the plaintiffs allege that the government has violated the Fourth Amendment by adopting a policy pattern or practice of stopping individuals without reasonable suspicion based on nothing but broad profiles, including apparent race and ethnicity. The plaintiffs then moved for a temporary restraining order to prevent the government from concluding further stops based solely on 4 factors: race, speaking Spanish with or English with an accent, presence at a particular location like a bus stop or car wash, and the type of work one does. They argued that these 4 factors, even when taken together, cannot support reasonable suspicion of unlawful activity absent more specific information about the person being stopped or the location being searched. My parents made me take my passport when I traveled to NYC and carried it with me the whole time. I'm a born U.S. citizen. This is simply papers, please.
And breaking news from the White House, the president has asked the Supreme Court to step in on the issue of immigration enforcement here in Southern California. This is one of several immigration headlines we're following right now.
And we have to cover. Carlos Grande is standing by with a report on Trump's calls for undocumented immigrants to be removed from the census count. But first, we go to Mark Robles, live in the newsroom with more on the brewing legal battle. Mark.
Yeah, David and Giovanna, we learned within the past 90 minutes or so, the Trump administration has asked the Supreme Court to lift that court order that's been in effect for nearly a full month. This after an appeals court already heard the matter and refused to lift it. The order blocks immigration stops and so-called roving patrols that a judge found to be indiscriminate in Southern California. That judge found that there was evidence that the federal immigration enforcement tactics were violating the Constitution. According to the White House, the order hinders their enforcement on immigration law, and so the Trump administration today filing this emergency petition. We have seen a dramatic decrease in the overall number of raids over the past couple of weeks, but of course we just saw that fairly big raid yesterday in the Westlake district. Several people were detained. Also breaking this afternoon, we've learned that roughly 300 National Guardsmen, they will remain on duty in Los Angeles. Thousands of members have been withdrawn over the past couple of weeks, along with hundreds of Marines after they were brought in to deal with the immigration protests. Live in the newsroom, Mark Robles, ABC 7 Eyewitness News. Giovanna, back to you.
Mark, thank you.
So the Supreme Court has declared it legal to stop people based on their race.
President Trump's mass deportation plan shifting into...
Wait, what happened? They deleted it? They deleted it? In the middle of me watching it? What the fuck? Okay,
Breaking at this hour, President Trump ramping up threats of immigration crackdowns as well as crime enforcement in major cities across America. Chicago, Boston, and promises from the White House borders are that more cities are coming. This morning, a new city the president is targeting, Baltimore. And Baltimore's Mayor Brandon Scott is vowing to fight back, saying the city does not need federal troops. Listen.
We don't need an occupation. We need a federal government that is working the right way to reduce gun violence, and that's the way that we've been doing it here in Baltimore.
With me now is the mayor of another major American city, Detroit's Mayor Mike Duggan. Mike Duggan, he also is right now running for governor of Michigan, which we will get to. It's great to see you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
It has been, we were saying, it's been a moment since I've seen you in person, so I appreciate your time. So you have the mayor. Let's talk about what's going on in Illinois and Chicago. The mayor of Chicago, the governor of Illinois, they're pushing back very hard against these enforcement efforts and the threats coming from President Trump that he's going to be moving in with federal law enforcement. What would you do if he wanted to do the same in Detroit?
Well, of course, neither the president or anybody from the administration has suggested that. When I got elected in 2013, we had 750 carjackings, the most in America.
Right.
This year we'll have fewer than 75. We've been down 90%. Detroit's the city.
YouTube will in real time control access to videos. I've seen videos get privated while it was being watched. Well, it just happened.
that other police departments are coming to see how we've gotten the violence down. And this year, we've actually had a partnership with the Trump administration. The U.S. attorney that President Trump put in, Jerome Gorgon, has doubled the...
Every single Democrat is going into collaborator mode. There's another story that's on my desk about how Chuck Schumer wants to give Trump everything he wants in exchange for a promise not to cut the Obamacare subsidies. Get the fucking gimp suit out there. Get it out. They've been wearing it.
A number of federal prosecutors prosecuting gun crimes, and we are going to have the fewest homicides this year since 1965. I'm not sure what the reason is, but we have the kind of partnership with the Trump administration that Mayor Scott has been looking for in Baltimore. They're working with us prosecuting the gun violence, not trying to disrupt what we're doing.
It's actually really noteworthy, and something I was thinking about knowing that you were coming in, is that, I mean, the president has targeted Detroit before. I remember vividly when he was giving a speech during the campaign saying if Kamala Harris wins, that every city in America is going to be just like Detroit, saying that in front of a bunch of people from Detroit. But and according to FBI stats, Detroit is still, while major progress has been made, Detroit is among the cities facing some of the highest crime rates still across the country, according to FBI stats. But again, Detroit has not been mentioned by Donald Trump once this round. Why do you think that is?
So you look at what happened in the 4-day Labor Day weekend, where a lot of cities in the country, you reported, are huge numbers of shootings, one city upwards of 50 shootings. That 4-day weekend, Detroit had 8. We have changed the trajectory. I'm not telling you we've solved the problem, because I think 8's far too many, but we actually have a partnership with our local violence prevention folks, county sheriff, but we have the ATF, the DEA, and the Justice Department has been helping us shut these gangs down. And I think the fact that we're working together with the Trump administration to bring the violence down, I would hope you start to see more.
I like the way he raises the pitch of his voice, so he's like, I'm already a virtual eunuch. You don't have to make it official, Daddy Trump. Please.
Cities move to that kind of partnership.
But candidly, there's a lot of politics at play here. Do you think that any of this, the fact that, let's just say, Detroit and Michigan has not been targeted by Trump on this, has anything to do with the fact that the outgoing governor, Gretchen Whitmer, has taken a decidedly different approach to President Trump than you've seen with the governor of Illinois or the governor of California? Gretchen Whitmer has just worked with the president rather than taken an adversarial anti-Trump approach.
Well, there's no question. Michigan is benefiting from the fact that Governor Whitmer went to D.C. I mean, she saved.
Detroit, why do you have the most right-wing Republican Democrat? Holy fucking hell, dude.
Legislative days left to prevent a government shutdown. House Democrats now looking to their Senate counterparts to stop any GOP spending bill, excluding their input. But distrust between the party is growing after the March funding bill cleared with support from Senate Democrats, including Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. This month, Democrats fear the same outcome. The Schumer writing this to Democrats after speaking with Hakeem Jeffries, quote, "We are aligned on our shared priorities for September. Where Republicans obstruct, we press forward. Where they sow division, we answer with unity. Where they threaten shutdown, we hold them accountable." I want to bring in Ohio Congressman Warren Davidson. He's a member of the House Financial Services Committee. Congressman, and one of the things that the Hill is reporting this morning is that the reminder about March, and that it was Chuck Schumer that lined up with the GOP to get the funding passed. But Democrats seem to believe right now that Schumer is not going to make that same mistake. However, that could be political suicide for the midterms for the Democrats. Your reaction?
Yeah, good morning, Cheryl. I think that's the real challenge. Chuck Schumer has always said it's irresponsible to shut down the government. And, he felt convicted about that and frankly supplied the votes in the Senate to keep us from having a shutdown, which is what Democrats wanted. They wanted the shutdown. And they seem to be pressuring Chuck Schumer to give them another shutdown. Usually that doesn't turn out well for the party that shuts.
So basically what we're at now, chat, is the Democrats are the party of the rich. And if it means that the government is fascist because that's the Republican party, then the Democrats are going to say, okay, we have to protect the rich. That's it. They're not going to do anything that might jeopardize the economy or the rich people's balance sheets to stop fascism. So what? Brown people are rounded up because they're brown? As long as stonks go up, Chuck Schumer's fine.
Shuts down the government. But the real challenge is, no surprise, Congress isn't going to hit the September 30th funding deadline. And part of the challenge has been the Senate because Democrats have been obstructing President Trump's nominees. So they've used up all the floor time. They can't get to the floor to do some of the appropriations.
Well, and it looks like they're really.
What are we going to do?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it looks like they're really going to dig in on the Affordable Care Act, and that's where they're going to start to maybe put down some red lines. So we'll see what they do when things get back going today. But I want to bring in Liz Pink. She's got a question for you, sir.
Yeah, I'm just curious what it is that's really on the table here. I mean, obviously Republicans are going to be trying to cut or hold spending. And I presume that Democrats don't like that. Is it all about the cuts in the big, beautiful bill to Medicaid? Is that what they're going to try to reverse? In your view, what is the big sticking point to arriving at some sort of agreement?
Well, in March, we couldn't develop a consensus beyond just status quo funding, CR. And it's hard for Democrats to say they oppose that because they passed it. I mean, this is what really the Democrats wanted when Joe Biden was president and they had the majority in the Senate. So it's hard for them to come out against that funding level. So a lot of people see just a status quo CR as the most conservative thing we could pass, because to get 60 votes in the Senate, requires some major concession to Democrats. There are some provisions within Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, that expire, and they want to reauthorize those to continue expanding Obamacare. And obviously that approach to healthcare didn't work. Premiums have skyrocketed. People have been as frustrated as ever.
President Trump's mass deportation plan shifting into high gear this week. The president's border czar warning that Chicago will see stepped-up immigration enforcement this week.
Absolutely. You can expect action in most sanctuary cities across the country.
Overnight, Mr. Trump asked about his plans for the Windy City.
Chicago is a very dangerous place. We could solve Chicago very quickly, but we're going to make a decision as to where we go over the next day or two.
The president ramping up his rhetoric against the country's third largest city, posting this AI-generated meme with the phrase "Shypocalypse now," with a caption reading, "I love the smell of deportations in the morning," and "Chicago is about to find out why it's called the Department of War." Illinois' Democratic Governor J.B. Pritzker responding. The President of the United States is threatening to go to war with an American city. This is not normal. Trump calling that interpretation of his post fake news.
We're not going to war. We're going to clean up our cities. We're going to clean them up so they don't kill 5 people every weekend. That's not war. That's common sense.
This weekend, the president's deployment of federal agents to major cities fueling massive protests in Chicago, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. While Boston's mayor criticized the new large-scale ICE operation to target what DHS called the worst of the worst criminal illegal aliens.
And that was just what? People at Home Depot looking for day labor? People at a car wash? Like, they're just lying!
Living in Massachusetts.
They are attacking our communities in order to try to push forward their own authoritarian agenda.
Last week, DHS says it arrested 475 people at a Hyundai plant in Georgia, fueling international uproar, with some 300 detained South Korean workers set to be returned to that country on a chartered flight. South Korea, a key economic partner in the president's trade agenda, making a deal for lower tariffs and more investments in the U.S. this summer. The president addressing the raid Sunday night.
ICE was doing right because they were here illegally. But we do have to work something out where we bring in experts so that our people can be trained so that they can do it themselves.
All of this comes as new NBC News polling shows the president's approval rating mired at 43%. Border security and immigration are actually the issues on which the president performs best with the American people, with 47% approving of how he handles those matters. But Mr. Trump performs poorly on the economy. What our poll found was respondents' most important issue set. 41% approve of his handling of trade and tariffs, and just 39% approve of his handling of inflation.
Hey, thanks for watching. And don't forget, you can catch the Today Show every morning on NBC, or take Today.
I mean, it's just, what could you even say? What the fuck could you even say? Like, it's just a complete and utter collapse of all elements of liberalism. Like, they can't do, and by the way, chat, I hate to say I told you so. I just searched work with Trump I just said work with Trump. It's very funny to see Vote Blue no matter who grifter accounts calling Trump a fascist while the actual politicians they support in the centrist Democratic Party are all pledging to work with Trump. Don't any of you have shame? Centrist Democrats are working directly with Trump because they want to stop a social Democrat, Zohran, with a solid but relatively unambitious plan to make New York City more affordable. They are collaborators with fascism. This is direct evidence that the Trump fascist right wing is directly colluding with the Democratic Party establishment and their allied media. Case study on how centrists are eager to work with fascists to block even mild social democracy. Elite Democratic Party liberal collaboration with Trump and the right is in general has what got us to this disastrous point. Both Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass are fully capitulating to Trumpian fascism. This party needs to be destroyed and a new opposition formed immediately. As Democrats flail and offer collaboration, Trump looks effective to the voters. This is what I wrote in June of 2024, chat. June of 2024. June of 2024. Before the election. Okay? This is what I wrote in June 2024. After Trump wins, fascists will align with liberals by claiming that the left-wing resistance and protests are disrupting civility and should be ruthlessly crushed. The day after Trump is sworn in, these liberals will suddenly find out how reasonable he is. Don't you ever get sick of being wrong? Now, chat, the only people who ever say this are literally pedophiles. I'm being serious. My critics are literally always pedophiles. I'm scared to even click this guy's profile. Oh, this is just a DGG alt account. You can tell. Wait, why'd you stop posting, Michael? Why'd you stop posting? What happened? Somewhere around 60% of the population of the U.S. is relatively normal. They are turned off by the right's complete obsession with trans people and profoundly oppose extreme abortion ban. If Harris and Walz win, it's because Republicans were just considered weird. I was trying to help them. I was like, please call Republicans weird. And they stopped doing it. He stopped posting on election day. He stopped posting. Did you see the new Supreme Court decision? I read the whole thing. I guess the bot thing got turned off. The Destiny bot accounts, I guess they stopped paying that bot provider.
5,000 jobs at an Air Force base in Macomb County because she went to see the president. People remember the picture of her putting the folder over her face. She saved 5,000 jobs for Michigan.
Here they are, Democrats defending Gretchen Whitmer kissing Trump's ass. As people are being swept off the streets for being brown, this guy is defending kissing Trump's ass. And I'm guessing, you know, kissing Trump ass makes so much sense because I'm sure Trump is really popular, right, guys? I mean, I'm sure Trump is like at the 60% approval rating. For the Democrats to so pathetically capitulate to Trump, he must be killing it in the approval.
CBS and NBC News show most Americans do not approve of how President Trump is doing his job. It's a different story with this base. The CBS News poll pegging his approval rating among Republicans at 91%, though. The new polls coming as Trump puts his focus on deploying the National Guard onto the streets of D.C. while implementing hardline immigration tactics. CNN Chief Data Analyst Harry Enton is here to run the numbers on all of this, and we do have some fresh numbers today. So, Harry, what are they telling us?
Yeah, I think they're telling us what we know about the Trump presidency is that Americans don't like it. So why don't we just take a look at these new polling that we have, and he remains underwater. Look, the CBS News poll, look at that. He's 12 points underwater. You want to go over to NBC? You want a different network? You can go to a different network, but it's the exact same story. 14 points underwater, double digits on this. This has been the story throughout much of the Trump presidency. He remains underwater as we get past Labor Day, Jessica.
And just how consistent have Trump's ratings been?
Yeah, okay. So this to me was the fascinating thing because, you know, I come on either every Saturday or Sunday or sometimes like this weekend, both days, and I talk about, oh, Trump's approval rating, he's underwater. I come up with some witty line or some line I think is witty, like he's more underwater than the Little Mermaid or something like that. And I decided to actually look, okay, how long has this dude been underwater? All right, so let's take a look at it. All right, negative net approval rating for Trump every single day. Every single day in my aggregate of polls since March 12th. Since March 12th, in terms of number of days, 180 days in a row he has been underwater. That is basically half a year. You know, the NFL season started this week. You basically have to go back to the end of the last NFL season to find a day in which Trump was above water. The bottom line is he has been swimming with the fishes for a very long.
The Democrats are losing to this. The Democrats are losing to this pathetic fucking fat incoherent, narcissistic blob because they are like, we love the status quo. The status quo is fucking great. Yeah, this is fucking amazing. We love it. We love the status quo. Yay! We're going to capitulate on everything. We're not going to fight back on anything. Oh, are you guys excited about Zohran Mamdani? Well, we're going to go after him and call him an anti-Semite.
Period of time, Jessica.
And what groups has he...
John... Okay, chat, we have a 40-year-old chatter. This is fucking great. Oh, fuck. I've been dreaming of this day. I've been dreaming of this day. I've been dreaming of this day. Oh, I've been dreaming of this day. You are a 41-year-old man, and your first follow was Asmongold. At least you came on Twitch, and your first follow was Asmongold, and you claim to have a wife? Let's be honest, John himself, 84. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. You've been on this website for how long? You've been on this website since 2014. Your first follow was Asmongold. I mean, you're not married. Let's be honest. You're not married. Come on. Stop pretending. Absolute roach. He's not even worthy of a ban. I like this guy. He can stay. I think legitimately, and you know, I'm a mean guy, but I think if you ever liked Asmongold, I don't think you're redeemable as a human being. Like, I think you are just kind of not really deserving of human rights. I mean, the guy wasn't even good at WoW, right? Like, you were watching him for what? You're watching him for transmog competitions. You're doing fashion shows with your blood elf. Guys, I have a mount. I have a really rare mount, and wow, that's what he was big for. He wasn't big because he was like pushing content. You were watching the male equivalent of dolls. You were watching the male equivalent of playing with dolls. Not even like somebody who was competitive in WoW. Not somebody who was pushing PvP or pushing raid content. You were watching the male equivalent of dressing up with dolls as a 30-year-old, 35-year-old man. You are not married. I mean, I know there's a lot of content you could watch. A lot of content you could be watching. If you were watching Asmongold in 2016, you do not have the light of humanity within you. There's nothing there. There's no redemption. Even at the beginning of his gaming content, he was a Nazi dog whistler. At no point was Asmongold good. I'm sorry, folks. Either you weren't even aware of what was going on around you, or like he was always bad. Always dog shit. Never good content ever. I'm married too, Mike. Sorry you're lonely. Me? Wait, did you make a new account? This is like your 5th account. Welcome back, Chrono Piggy. He had a swarm of sycophants around him at all times to protect him from PvP. Holy shit. That's so funny.
Zohran Mamdani, thank you very much for being here. So Eric Adams is staying in the race. He announced that he is not going to take some other...
The Elden Ring DLC gave him such a severe ego check that it caused him to give up on gaming content and push him into further news content. Didn't he play, did he try to play Battlefield and then he couldn't even like shoot the wall? Like, this guy sits on his computer all day, every day, and he can't fucking shoot anybody?
Position he was reportedly being offered by Trump. Why do you think he's staying?
You know, I cannot speak to Eric Adams' motivations or his interests. I can just tell you that it's been a lot of noise these last few weeks. And we've seen that this is the specialty of Donald Trump and his puppets. A lot of noise, few results. And all of it distracts from the fact that 1 in 4 New Yorkers are living in poverty in this city. And so often their concerns, their welfare has been secondary to the interests of these so-called leaders in trying to figure out their own futures.
Do you think Trump's involvement in this race at this point is helping you?
I think it's showcasing what's at stake, which is the fact that we have a vision to actually help New Yorkers afford their city. And Donald Trump has a vision to try and rip apart the very fabric of the city. He has passed legislation that will throw millions of New Yorkers off of their health care, ran a campaign on cheaper groceries, and is now cutting SNAP for hungry New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs.
What about when, you know, Donald Trump has threatened to bring troops into New York? He's done it in Washington. He wants to do it in Baltimore, Chicago. If you're elected mayor, I mean, do you think that that's the first thing he's going to do? Because he's made it clear he's invested in what happens here. He's a longtime New York resident. He does not want to see you elected. If you are, do you expect that he'll get involved?
We will prepare for every eventuality. And I agree with what Commissioner Tisch of the NYPD said, which is that we do not need the National Guard here. The NYPD can create that public safety for New Yorkers. And we've seen an example of how to fight back against this federal overreach in California, where you had the governor, the mayor, the attorney general work together to file a lawsuit that a judge recently found that the federal...
Well, this interview happened before today where they overturned that decision. So, looks like the courts don't work, Zohran. Got to try another strat. Oh, no. Did the courts not stop fascism? Oh, my God. Anyway, if you study Nazi Germany at all, you understand that courts are never an impediment to fascism. In fact, they're the easiest to subvert.
Federal government was illegally deploying the National Guard there. That's the kind of partnership we need to see in New York. And yet that's exactly the opposite of what we saw when Andrew Cuomo was leading the state.
So lawsuits would be your first step?
I think lawsuits. I also think...
He tried.
The fact that we look at our own law department, which has been on the forefront of some of the most critical cases in the country, and yet it's...
All right. It's time to start talking real shit. You're not going to stop Donald Trump with lawsuits. You're not going to stop Donald Trump with lawsuits. I get why he said this at the time, because there was an injunction and it seemed like it might succeed. And who could have seen the Supreme Court making some sort of incredibly overbroad injunction with no basis in the law? Me. That's who. Me. I honest to God don't think, what could I say? I think the big problem is that everybody's in spectator mode. You're all in spectator mode. You're all in, I'm judging politics from spectator mode. If you look at these systems and these politicians and these candidates and these institutions and these organizations resisting fascism, and you're like, oh, they're not doing it right. Who the fuck are you? What are you? Are you on a fucking UFO? Are you on the observation deck of Star Trek's The Next Generation's USS Enterprise? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're the movement. That's you. You're failing. I'm failing. There's no rescuer. There's no other person. You're the loser. This is the crisis that we face. It's like you're all suited up, but you're not on the field. And I think there's a very, very reasonable reaction to what I'm saying, which is, Mike, what should I do? Every single thing I can say right now has been thoroughly discredited by the online left. The only thing that people care about now is their own social media standing. There's an allergy to coherent comradeship, solidarity, direct action. The nature of criticism online now no longer even serves the function of criticism. It's just noise. Two small little things that have happened over the last few weeks have made me realize that we're in deep, deep, deep trouble, because I don't think that the energy, the discontent of the American people can be captured by the left as it currently exists, because there is a large number of people whose entire agenda is to poke holes in the sails. All they do is run around slicing holes in the sails. That's not going to sink the American ship, but it's pretty good at sinking the left's ship. And part of that is because the left is so weak, so profoundly weak, that anytime someone starts rising up from the left, everybody expects them to be able to handle everything. They're the savior. They're going to answer every question. They're going to have a policy for every problem. They're going to solve it all. I found my savior. And then when everybody who pops up inevitably is not a savior, is not the Messiah, it gives so many more people, they feel entitled to do even less and be even more cynical. And I don't know how to get people out of this mindset. I don't know how to do it. I think a lot about it, and I have to say, you've beaten me. I don't know how to get people to become mature thinking adults.
They're like, NATO, why do you got to talk about politics? What do politics have to do with me? I'm not an immigrant or a black person or a Muslim or a Jew or a gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender or a woman or an old person or a young person or a student or a union member or artist or journalist or scientist or public employee. I don't breathe the air or drink the water. I don't live in a coastal region that'll be affected by sea level rise or an arid region that'll be affected by drought or fire. I don't like chocolate, wine, or coffee or other commodities that will no longer be available due to climate change. I'm not mentally ill, pregnant, disabled, or currently being shot at, so... What do politics have to do with me? Some people don't want to talk about politics. They're like NATO.
Lost ground with.
Okay, so, we're talking about the fact that he was last positive. You got to go back before March 12th. So what has changed? What has changed since February, which was the last full month in which he was above ground? Well, take a look here. Trump's net approval rating among age 18 to 29. We're looking at the CBS News poll, but it holds true in the average as well. He was +2 back in late February.
Donald Trump makes major announcement about prayer in school. I am pleased to announce this morning that the DOE will soon issue new guidance protecting the right to prayer in our public schools. What that means is they mean mandating prayer. For most of our country's history, the Bible was found in every classroom in the nation, yet in many schools today, students are indoctrinated with anti-religious propaganda. Some have already been punished for their religious beliefs. The Religious Liberty Commission was established by Trump in an executive order issued in May. All right, Chad, we're about 4 hours into the stream, which means it's time for a shill. If you want to work with me muddling through this bullshit, trying to find a better way forward, please consider supporting the stream by subscribing at tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 sub. If you have Amazon Prime, you can attach that to your Twitch account. You get 1 free sub a month. That's your Twitch Prime sub. It's like $2.50 from Jeff Bezos's pocket that you're putting directly into mine. I don't know, man. I almost think talking about the online or talking about the left in America in general is wasted time, but it seems to be what people like to talk about. Or become a tier 3. So true, more up dog. I think, man, I'm just pondering, I'm pondering. Thank you guys for the support. Open Presents, thank you for the 25 gifties. Hammond Fist, thank you as well for the 20. I'm feeling reflective today, Chad. I'm feeling thoughtful. I think what I'm feeling is that at the very beginning of the Trump administration, we talked about the Rubicon. You guys remember the Rubicon? You guys remember when we said, okay, if they do this, we're going to do something. What was your Rubicon? What was your thing that if Trump did it, that would be the point where you fought back? Mine was stripping U.S. citizens of citizenship, shuttering DSA and PSL, military against civilians, if gay marriage is overturned, banning trans healthcare. Mine was talking to normies and realizing how stupid and terrible they are. That's not a Rubicon. Mike, people aren't going to act until it's at their doorstep. You know this. Of course I do. I've studied revolutions throughout history. People do not fight back until they're forced to. There is not going to be anything that I can't, in my way, I can't make you do it. People have too much. The economy isn't bad enough yet. There's enough distractions. Commodities are still widely available. The people that are intensely suffering are powerless. That's the gold. That's God's honest truth.
Look at where he is now. My God, that is a 32-point drop since the beginning of this year. How about Hispanics? He was at -6, a little bit underwater, but not too bad. But look at where he is now. -34 points. What is that? That's a 28-point drop since February. These, of course, were two groups that he exceeded expectations.
Lenin, Guevara, and Fanon, all in their particular fashion, postulate that before revolution can take place, all other forms of redress must be exhausted. Clearly exhausted. Electoral processes must have broken down. The confidence of the electorate in any of the old forms completely shattered. Confidence in the ability of the old system to honestly organize any aspect of public life must be shaken to the core. Years and years ago, it may have been an acceptable tactic to organize a people's ticket of solid worker and revolutionary credentials to arm it with an ideal platform only to be defeated. Like, this is absolutely true. And by the way, that's what I see Zohran as. That's what I see all of these reformers as. I don't see them as the end-all, be-all goal. I see them as a free roll. I see them as either they win and maybe they can extract some concessions in the context of a rising China and fear by the capitalist class about losing their position, or else they be shattered by cheating and the true foundations of the American system undermined at their core. That's what I see. That's what I believe. Was Matt Crispin our generation's Lenin, or do we not have a Lenin? I mean, all of us have to rededicate ourselves to building up our local centers of power. The things that really shook me to the core, the thing that really shocked me from how stupid it was, and thank you guys for the subs, was the discourse around the DSA convention. Which, if you were a participant in the DSA convention, if you were a participant or a person who went to Chicago, you came out of it feeling hopeful and energized, no matter where you stand among the various tendencies within DSA. But the way that the convention was described by the unorganized left online was blackpilling to the core. The other thing that has kind of hit me in the solar plexus is the various federal agents that are now injecting themselves into places like Twitch, and the rise of compatible left style politics in just generally the DSA or the Hassan orbit, and the disorganization of people like Bad and Panada. I gotta be honest, chat. Like the Bad and Panada crash out is happening in the context of a lot of other people crashing out in a similar way. I agree with the fact that acceleration is simply happening. The question is, should we expend effort to slow this down, or should we let it run its course and tear down all the structures that support the current system? You are incorrect about the system's instability. The system, under its own logic, is not unstable. I'm sorry, you're just wrong. You're just wrong about what's happening to America. America is not destabilized. The systems are not only functioning, they are operating under a new fascist logic that's being created before your very eyes and under its own standards. What's the problem? Can you explain where they're falling short under their own logic? From Trump's point of view, how has Trump failed? Europe has capitulated. The Gaza genocide continues apace. International institutions of human rights have never been more discredited, disempowered. The stock market is rising. He's profiting from so many schemes and cryptocurrency scams and personal bribes. In what way is Donald Trump, under his logic, is he failing? He's executing a white supremacist mass deportation campaign with no resistance from the Democrats. In fact, they're helping. Who are the obvious feds in your opinion? I think it's pretty obvious who the federal agents are. I'll give you a hint at when you could determine someone's a federal agent. I'll give you a hint. Insist on doing everything through channels. Never permit shortcuts to be taken in order to expedite decisions. Make speeches. Talk as frequently as possible at great length. Illustrate your points by long anecdotes and accounts of personal experiences. Never hesitate to make a new appropriate patriotic comments. When possible, refer all matters to committees for further study. Attempt to make the committees as large as possible, never less than 5. Bring up irrelevant issues as frequently as possible. Haggle over wordings, minutes, resolutions. Refer back to matters decided upon at the last meeting and attempt to reopen the question of the advisability of that decision. Advocate caution. Avoid haste. Be worried about propriety. Raise the question of whether such action is contemplated that lies within the jurisdiction of the group, whether it might conflict with the policy of some higher echelon. Multiply paperwork in plausible ways. Start duplicate files. Multiply procedures and clearances. Apply all regulations to the last letter. See that 3 people have to approve everything when 1 would do. Spread in disturbing rumors that sound like inside dope. Give lengthy and incomprehensible explanations. Act stupid. Be irritable and quarrelsome. Misunderstand all sorts of regulations concerning traffic matters such as rationing, transportation regulations. Cry or sob hysterically at every occasion. All I'm trying to say is you can see the people that are very fucking annoying only exist to criticize and trash people. It's pretty obvious who is not on the same team.
With back in the 2024 election did much better than the traditional Republican has this century, but now these groups have absolutely moved away from him, and he is way underwater, 30 points and 34.
Feds take one look at leftist movement, see the infighting, and they kick their feet back. You are crazy. They're all over the leftist movement. They're all over the leftist movement. What do you mean? And the problem is the fact that they are is also demotivating. That's another crisis. Because they exist, they're also demotivating. And then there's a lot of people that are, quite frankly, I don't know how else to put it, but not very conscientious, not very easily influenced.
4 points underwater. Those two groups have moved away from him in tremendous fashion, and it goes a long way in explaining why his overall approval rating, his net approval rating, has fallen.
It's called simple sabotage. It's by the CIA.
To the floor and been negative for such a long period of time, Jessica.
And what issues does he do well with?
Okay, so there are a few things that I think that are so important to figure out here. Okay, so we're talking about groups, right? Is there any place where Donald Trump does well with? Well, let's talk about issues first. Okay, Trump's net approval rating. I got crime, immigration, foreign policy, the economy, trade. There's a whole slew of red, and this isn't Republican red. This is negative red, Jessica Dean. -2 points, -3 points, -12 points, -14 points, -17 points. On all the key issues of the day, he is underwater, Jessica. No wonder you can't survive in a presidency having a positive net approval rating when you're underwater on all of these different issues. And, of course, crime and immigration were two of his best issues, and now he's underwater on all of them. And then, of course, the economy, which was the reason he was reelected in the first place. This is the one I really circle here. He's 14 points underwater, which basically looks pretty much like those CBS News and NBC News polls, which have him at -12 and -14 points. I'll point out one last little thing. I'm going to jump ahead a question because I just feel like I'm in such a roll, Jessica Dean. I just feel the energy with me.
Don't let us stop you.
Thank you very much. So we see...
Do the polls matter? No. The vast majority of Democrats prefer socialism to capitalism. And are we getting a bunch of socialists elected in primaries? Anytime they win, it's nonstop. How can we ally with Trump to defeat them?
All this negative, but the thing that you pointed out at the beginning that I think is so important, what is the one saving grace for Donald Trump right now? And that is the Republican base. What are we talking about here? Well, take a look here. Republicans who approve of Trump. Well, in the CBS News poll back in February, look at this. It was 90%. Look at where it is now. You mentioned it at the top. It's at 91%. As long as this Republican base sticks with him, as long as he's hearing the good news from the conservative talk radio host, as long as he's hearing the good news from the folks out there on the right, he's going to think he has very strong support. So I don't think that Donald Trump is going to do anything differently as long as this 91% holds. And as I said, it's steady as ever because that's actually a point higher than it was in February, Jessica.
All right, Harry Enton, running the numbers as always. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And let's bring in CNN senior political commentators David Urban and Van Jones. David is a Republican strategist. Van worked for the Obama administration.
So many people who are ultra leftists also eventually become mega sellouts. Van Jones, former Maoist, now he's wearing the Israeli hostage pin. So we have two genocide supporters.
And they've both held numerous other positions since then, but that at least gives you a good working idea. David, let's start first with you. Sometimes I have to prompt you with a whole question, but Harry just went through a lot of data. What did you think about all that?
Yeah, listen, so Harry's great at that. And what he didn't tell you, though, and what Harry would admit to, is that Donald Trump's ceiling, ever since he's been a candidate, has been 44%. That's the number in that YouGov poll that just came out this morning. The CBS YouGov polls at 44%. By the way, that's up 2% since the last poll in July. And so he's consistently polled that 44% approval rating. And so, you know, that's kind of where he was at when he won the election in 24. It's where he's been at consistently. And as Harry points out, he's up a percentage point with Republicans. And so I don't think that, you know, that Rome is burning here. I think that Trump is continuing to do what he did. He's delivering on the messages that on the immigration and cracking down on crime that won him the election in 24, and he's being rewarded among the base for it.
What do you think, Van?
Well, look, I think that if I were Republicans, I'd be worried about that Latin number. They scared the living bejeebers out of us in November when you saw this stampede of brown voters rushing to Donald Trump. We said, holy crap. And that was the whole ball game. And then you got a bunch of young people as well. And so that's why you've seen the therapy bills for Democrats going through the roof, because we had this fantasy that we were always going to be the party of black, brown, and young voters. And suddenly we're just the party of African-American voters, and even we didn't come out as strong as we usually do. Trump could have kept all that if he had done what he said he was going to do on immigration. He said he was going to go after the bad folks. And listen, I live in Los Angeles. There's some people.
I mean, this guy claims that, he claims to have been a socialist in the past, and the way he talks about politics would make a liberal blush. I mean, this guy is so cynical. He's such a disgusting rat, man.
People need to get the heck out of this country. But they're not nannies. They're not people who work, who stand around the Home Depot trying to get a day laborer job. When he started going after just everybody's kind of working class cousin, it just, the floor fell out from under him. And I'm telling you, as somebody who lives in Los Angeles, there are a lot of people, now listen, he has a lot of support in some parts of the country. But in parts of the country where working class Latin folks thought he was going to go get the bad guys and they went and got their cousins, he's in real trouble.
David, do you think, just again, putting aside the 91% approval rating with Republicans, but to Van's point, we saw those numbers with Harry, the younger voters and the Hispanic voters that are dropping off from supporting the president. Is it because he's gone too far on some of these issues, like what Van's talking about?
Yeah, look, I don't know if it's that, Jessica, or if it's economic issues. Because if you look in those polls, right, people are feeling it in their pocketbook. Those polls say that, that they're not feeling better about the economy. They're concerned about.
Wait a minute, we did a massive tax cut for the rich, and we cut a bunch of programs for regular people, and it didn't cause the economy to grow. What happened? I wonder if this has ever been studied before. I mean, it doesn't work. I mean, this is listen. We talked about this when it came out 2 years ago, but there's this really left-wing organization called the London School of Economics and Political Science. They're super left-wing. Oh wait, they're not. Oh wait, it's a bourgeois thing. Oh, okay. Tax cuts for the wealthy only benefit the rich. The last 50 years has seen a dramatic decline in taxes on the rich across advanced democracies. Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump were all elected on promises of major tax cuts for top earners, arguing that freeing up money for the wealthy allows them to hire more workers, pay better wages, and invest more. In research first published as a working paper in 2020, David Hope and Julian Limburg of LSE's International Inequalities Institute and King's College London analyzed the economic effects of major tax cuts for the rich across 5 decades in 18 wealthy nations. The rich get richer while unemployment and economic growth are unaffected. If you cut taxes on the rich, they bargain more aggressively for their own compensation at the direct expense of workers down lower on the income distribution. We were a bit naive in not thinking about this beforehand, but it's clearly a very partisan and polarized and politically contentious issue, particularly in the U.S., in part because they've evolved through Democrat and Republican administrations have been major changes in taxes on the rich. We've seen big tax cuts under George W. Bush and under Donald Trump in particular, so I think it really plays into the political dynamic in that country, and that's why people were very engaged with it. In explaining why cutting taxes on the rich did nothing to boost economies, Dr. Hope referred to the economist Thomas Piketty, who argues that unless capitalism is reformed, it will threaten the democratic order. Our results align pretty closely with some work from Thomas Piketty that would suggest that what happens if you cut taxes on the rich is that they bargain more aggressively for their own compensation at direct expense of workers down lower on the income distribution. So the story of the paper then is really to do with rent seeking among CEOs and top executives, and that increasing when you have lower taxes on the rich. Rent seeking is the effort to increase one's share of existing wealth without creating new wealth, rather like a greedy child demanding a bigger slice of pie so there's less left on the plate for everyone else. I think the paper has one major and fairly obvious policy implication, which is not to cut taxes on the rich to boost the economy, particularly if you care about inequality. I think it's particularly important to make this argument because proponents of cutting taxes on the rich often use this type of argument in favor of the economic benefits. In 2017, when Donald Trump was introducing the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, he claimed that the American people that this would rocket fuel for the U.S. economy. We don't find any evidence in our study across 18 advanced economies over 50 years of that being true. Okay, so chat, cutting taxes on the rich has never helped the economy. Ever. I'll say that again. There is zero evidence that cutting taxes on the rich has ever helped the economy. So why do we keep doing it? Like, if I were to say that, if I were to talk to a conservative and I were to say, there is no evidence that cutting taxes on the rich helps the economy at all, how many of them would accept it? And if they don't accept it, why not? I mean, we've done it so many times. In my life, There's been so many times they cut taxes on the rich, and every single time they did, there was a fucking recession. Dr. Hope and Dr. Lindbergh followed up their research by investigating why ordinary people in the U.S. support tax cuts for the rich. The average citizen seems to be fairly poorly informed that taxes on the rich have fallen really dramatically in the past 40 years. If you give them that information, it makes them less likely to support tax cuts for the rich. And these effects, we found, are particularly strong for Republican voters. So the last 40 years has been nonstop stagnation. At the same time, we cut government and cut taxes on the rich. This is one of the things that I find particularly difficult to handle. Everything I say is well understood. It has been understood for decades. Public policy is actually really easy. I'll say that again. It's not hard to solve the problems that we have. For those of you who were kind of bummed earlier, let me just bring you back into the light by telling you, we know how to solve every single problem in America. When I'm talking about things like congestion, housing shortages, healthcare bankruptcies, education disparity, we know how to solve every single one of those problems. It's not even hard. The reason why we don't do it is because rich people buy your politicians.
I just laughed because I just saw an IM to say, back to hear how everything is worse today. Love you, Sam. The news is bleak, folks, and it's going to be that way for a while, but it's Friday, trying to have a little bit of fun. I took some inspiration, I have to say. I think it was Mamdani's interview with... I've had it. Yes. Where he was talking about the scavenger hunt and saying, we got to have some fun, too, which is... I'm not going to lie. It's hard to do in the face of a lot of the horrors that are going on around the world. But you need to have a little bit of fun so that you maintain the energy for pushing for some justice and positive change. And otherwise, you're just going to go batty. Did I mention it?
You might still go batty.
I was just about to say, did I mention Emma's out today? And I can't remember anything. We've been told for a while from economists that it's going to take a while to start to see the job losses and the hit the economy is going to take and the inflation as the tariffs sort of work their way through the system. This past month, we got data, I think it was 2 days ago, saying that our imports and exports were up a little bit. And that suggests that the stuff that U.S. retailers, wholesalers had bought, importers essentially, had bought in the early months of the Trump administration in anticipation of a possible tariff regime and had been stored in warehouses, has started to run out. And now they're having to import more stuff. And so we're going to see the impact on inflation, I'm convinced, over the next couple of weeks, next couple of months. And now we're also seeing the impact of the tariffs on job losses and even all the deportations. It's counterintuitive. The deportation regime has also inhibited hiring of native-born Americans because businesses can't operate, in many instances, because they've lost a significant amount of their trained workforce, whether it's construction or other services. They've also lost a considerable amount of their customer base in many instances. And so we're looking at all sorts of job losses. The youth unemployment is up, and black unemployment is up 7.5%. It's the highest since October of 2021. And it both, shows that, supposedly the immigration roundup is not going to help young people and black people in the workforce. But black job numbers, they tend to be sort of the canary in the coal mine, if you will. It's always black people, and I'm sure it's not because there's any systemic racism in this country or that black people are in any way structurally disadvantaged in our workforce, but black people always tend to be on the front edge of job losses.
Repeat of the financial crisis.
Yeah, exactly. Here is Fox Business News actually having to admit that. Now, remember, the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics was fired because of the last month's job numbers. So these are the good ones.
Go through them, Lauren.
Yep, I sure do. 22,000 jobs added in the month of August. That was much less than the expectation of 75,000, guys. The July number was revised. I will get to revisions in a moment. Unemployment rate
revised
coming
down
as expected, 4.3%. So that would be higher than July's 4.2%. Again, 22,000 jobs added in August. Let me get you the revisions because this is what everybody is focused on. For June and July together, combined 21,000 jobs lower than previously reported. I'll categorize that now. So you see for June, it was revised down by 27,000, getting you to negative 13,000, and the change for July up by 6,000, getting you to 79,000.
Negative jobs. Over the last 3 months, job growth has averaged 29,000. Again, way, way below what you need to keep up just with population. And outside of healthcare, all of these jobs have taken place in healthcare. Outside of healthcare, the economy has lost 26,000 jobs since May. Of course, healthcare is very much helped by tariffs because you get people who lose their businesses and then they get ill, and then there's people who get hired to take care of them. I'm being facetious. But we have an aging population, and so healthcare numbers are going to go up. The average hourly wage has increased 3.7% year over year. That's down from 4.0% rate in 2023 and 24, and it has grown just 3.5% if you annualize the last 3 months. The rate of wage growth for low-paid, non-supervisory restaurant workers has been just 3.2%, inflation rising more rapidly than that. Unemployment rate for black teens, I said black people in general, 7.5%, rose 0.3% to 7.5%. The unemployment rate for black teens rose to 24.8%. That's the highest since May of 2020. May of 2020. Well, we were locked down.
Remember that.
Job leavers were only 10.7% of the unemployed in August. And that's compared to 13.2% in 2018 and 2019 when the unemployment rate was comparable. These numbers are put together by Dean Baker. And so what that means is people are afraid. People have a sense that the job market is really soft and they're not going to willingly leave. The share of unemployed who have been unemployed for 27 weeks or more rose to 25.7%. That's the highest since February of 2022. Again, that's in the wake of COVID. The manufacturing sector, remember, this is a big thing of the tariffs. We're gonna build things in America again.
Look at this poster.
We just need time.
We just need time. 12,000 jobs lost in August. Auto manufacturing, 7,300 jobs lost in August. Jobs in auto manufacturing are down almost 23,000 over the last year. But things that we're building.
How many concentration camp guard jobs did we create, though?
That's coming in. We haven't seen those numbers yet, but we're building. Lost 7,000 construction jobs in August. And jobs in scientific research and development fell by 3,600 in August. Not that many, except for it tends to be research and development in science that we get innovations, et cetera, et cetera. We're not going to be in that business anymore. That number, I suspect, is going to go higher and higher, and it's going to be driven by voluntary job leaving, if not job losses, because people are going to go to different countries. The scientists are going to go where their skills are actually wanted and rewarded. So manufacturing loss, that's a function. Again, the tariffs are supposed to be geared towards that. Jobs for men that were going to come back once our manly men are making all the manufacturing again. Men have lost 56,000 jobs over the last 4 months. Women have gained 76% of the jobs in 2025 compared to a regular 50%. That's probably my guess. My guess is that's a function of most of the job gains coming in healthcare. The native-born unemployment rate is at the highest levels since the pandemic.
Somehow don't think Stephen Miller will stop using reason to hunt down every non-white person.
I suspect you're right. But what happens when you fire the head of the BLS so you can no longer pretend like these jobs numbers are rigged? And again, I'm going to trust that the numbers coming out here are not rigged just because there's a Trump crony in there now. Because, the idea of a limited hangout, well, we got to, don't make the lie too big. But let's just assume these numbers are, in fact, accurate. The Trump people can't complain about it anymore because it's their people at the BLS. And they obviously know things are getting worse. So how do you respond? Well, it's sort of like they're getting religion in the sense that, like, your reward will come to you in the next life. And here's Howard Lutnick doing his version of that.
That, I mean, think of the employment. You look at next year's employment, it is going to explode. All these factories we're building, all the plants that are coming into America. You look at the unemployment rate numbers today, wait till a year from today. Wow, it will be amazing numbers.
Well, let's talk about that. We do have a
that dude, now people are like, how can he be so excited? How does he maintain that?
Hey, Mango, what's up, brother?
Because his sons just made billions of dollars on having bought up all of these tariff refund financial instruments several months ago, betting that the tariffs are going to be found to be illegal.
Next year's going to look great for the Lutnicks.
Oh, this dude is like, fire me now. I've cashed in. He is so excited about next year. I can't even contain my...
Sounds like a good plan. Wreck the economy, unemployment rises, people flock to ICE, the DHS jobs to stay afloat. Yeah, that definitely seems like what's happening. Okay, this is a really good TikTok. I have to watch it. Apparently, Greece played Israel in Euro basketball. Why is Israel in the Euro basketball? You're not from Europe. I thought.
الأراذيل ساموا رسول أهل العزائم القول قول الصوارم كي تسترد المظالم حتى الأراذيل ساموا رسول أهل العزائم ما دنسوا لي حمانا لو طوقته الضراغم حثالة البغي صالت فأين عهد الحواسم ناسوا بأننا أبات نذود ذود القشاعم نحن الذين وطئنا بالخيل عرش الأعاجم بالخيل عرش.
These Israeli players stand around like IDF soldiers right before a Hamas soldier comes out of the tunnel and drops off a little present. I think I saw a Hamas soldier shoot a bomb into the top of a Israeli tank hatch just like this.
Bye-bye, Israel! Bye-bye!
I show speed, man. That clip.
I'm so excited about the next year. I can't wait.
Think about next year's employment. I'm thinking about this next month's rent. But
incidentally, it's September.
Right, exactly.
So let's just give him a couple of months into next year. He's saying 6 months out. I mean, how many literally tens of hundreds of thousands of people are going to lose their jobs between now and his mystery time when we're going to get mystery explosive job growth?
To make the robots that clean the
And the amazing thing is, like, if construction's down 7,000 people, like, where are these mystery jobs going to be created? ICE. And incidentally, we have yet to see all of those federal workers who took involuntary or voluntary, so-called retirement. Those are all people who thought they could enter into the job force in another place. So those people are going to be, at one point, filing for unemployment. I suspect that's going to be sometime around the first quarter of next year. And now we're going to probably see the Fed raise rates. I mean, I should say drop rates to deal with this unemployment. And it just increases the chances of stagflation because our economic numbers are no better than the job numbers.
There'll be a little disturbance. We're okay with that. It won't be much.
Don't worry. Lutnick says it's going to be great.
2026, maybe 2027. We'll see how it looks, but one of those years is going to be great.
Next year, everybody's net worth will be up $5 billion.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe.
Wait.
I wonder, should we even play this video? But
is Jimmy Dore Nick Fuentesing now?
This is good for us.
So Nick Fuentes is a fire.
Does Jimmy Dore still, does he do well? I haven't heard much about Jimmy Dore. Did he fall off or is he still around?
Brand. He's a young, I think he's 25 years old. He's been accused of a lot of things. He's been accused of being anti-Semitic. Who hasn't? He's been accused of being racist. Also, a lot of people in that boat. A little more evidence to back it up on his side, though. But he really has a hard time. He doesn't like race mixing, but none of that has anything to do with this. He's now coming after Charlie.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Who hasn't been accused of, hey, he doesn't like race mixing, whatever. Just throw that away.
This is me talking to my high school girlfriend when she's going to meet my grandfather.
But you're like not like dismissing it. Like,
no.
I don't want you to get the idea that he's racist. He just doesn't like the race mixing.
Yeah, don't get distracted by the white hood.
Where do you have his chicken, though?
But haven't we all been accused? He is mad because he's too much of a drunk, lazy idiot to have gotten on board with what, like, actually Anna is doing now, right? Where it's basically like anti-Zionist or anti-Israel rhetoric, but it's always like about them infiltrating the U.S. It's not an anti-colonial or an anti-capitalist perspective or like anti-imperialism even more broadly, maybe to a degree, but it focuses on it being like a secret cabal of Jews that are controlling our foreign policy, or AIPAC being a foreign lobby. It's always a secondary thing and acting like Israel is leading the United States as opposed to a creation of like Western imperialism and our foreign policy. And he missed the boat on getting in bed with the Tuckers and the Candace Owenses. So now he's got to go to Nick Fuentes, who's to the right of those guys on that. He thinks that Steve Bannon is a faker because Bannon thinks that there should be black people in Trump's coalition. But like, I mean, like tomato, some differences. We're all on the same side here, I guess.
And I like wonder that like sort of creepy laugh that his wife is doing when like we've all been accused of being racist.
Right.
Oh, right. That was when we were out there protesting against the black people moving in our neighborhood.
Yeah.
Is that the end of it?
In that boat. A little more evidence to back it up on his side, though. But he really has a hard time. He doesn't like race mixing, but none of that has anything.
He has a hard time with race mixing.
He doesn't like race mixing, but there's nothing to do with it.
Why is it so hard for people to be normal? Like, we have such an incredibly easy job, which is talking about politics online. And these commentators can just not be normal. I guess it's from chasing the right-wing algorithm. And once you start chasing the right-wing algorithm on YouTube, you end up flushing yourself down the toilet. All right, chat. I'm going to call it there today. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. We'll have a very upbeat, positive stream tomorrow. We're going to catch up with some of the stuff we didn't get to, like the... new John Oliver. The Supreme Court decision really fucking... That's crazy racist, man. It's so crazy racist. All right, here's all my links. I'll see you all tomorrow. Stay safe out there. Solidarity forever, my friends. And thank you for all the support. Appreciate you. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace out.